dear forms you often miss when you close your earthly story. Will you join them in their bliss?
Hello and welcome to a very somber edition of WGTC Radio, the podcast.
Yes.
I am Jonathan Lack.
And I am Sean Chapman.
And we are here to talk about Bioshock motherfucking Infinite!
Fuck yeah, we are!
Yeah!
Very somber tone.
Yes. Bioshock Infinite came out 2 weeks ago, I believe.
Yes.
And we are here now that you've all had a chance to play it. I've had a chance to play it. One of the best games ever. We are going to go deep into Bioshock Infinite, so if you have not played the game, for the love of God, A, go play the game.
Yeah.
But B, don't listen to this episode, because that's, of all games in recent memory, that's the one you don't want spoiled.
Yeah. It's a very story-heavy game, so yeah.
Now, we will also be talking about the most recent episode of Doctor Who, The Rings of Akhaten.
Yeah.
So, also happy with that. So this will be a overall positive podcast. Although we mentioned it was we were being somber. That was just because of the song, which we'll talk about later. I do think we have one sad thing we have to address on this episode of the podcast. Happened last week in between podcasts, but I do want to talk about it for just a minute. Roger Ebert, who was a big influence on me, and I know Sean, you're obviously a big fan.
Yeah.
He passed away last week, and that's very, very sad. And I just wanted to give a little mention to that because I know we've quoted him on this podcast and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
obviously, the most influential critic of modern criticism.
Yes.
So,
yeah, and like I said, huge influence on me. I was just really sad and surprised, especially because he had a blog post just the night before, basically explaining that his cancer was back, but that he would try to do more writing, even though he could not do as much writing as he did in the past. And so it was a very big surprise.
Yeah.
Even though we kind of, we knew he was old and had health problems. But wanted to give a shout out there. Roger Ebert, you will be missed. So hopefully he and Gene Siskel are arguing about a movie together in heaven.
Yeah.
That'd be good. In any case, that's the somber part. I actually have one other somber thing to talk about. This is not as sad.
Yeah.
But a news thing we thought we should mention, because we have talked about some of these issues on the podcast before, is that this week Disney announced that they were shutting down LucasArts, which is the company run by Lucasfilm that makes video games.
Yeah, it's their video game publishing house and also internal development.
And has made some fine titles.
Yeah, I mean, LucasArts as a video game developer has a very storied history going back to, they don't just make, licensed products of Star Wars and Indiana Jones, they made those games, and, one of my favorite games of all time, Knights of the Old Republic, was made because LucasArts existed. But then also, if you go back to the 80s and the 90s, they made all the classic and really beloved old adventure games like Monkey Island and those types of games. And so, it's really, I mean, the other thing is that in recent years, LucasArts has not done a whole lot. The Star Wars games, the biggest thing was Star Wars: The Old Republic. And while I really liked that game, that game was just never going to be successful with the format it was in and the time it came out with World of Warcraft and stuff. But other than that, this is the saddest part of it, is that the last game that LucasArts published was Star Wars Kinect. So
fucking God.
Yeah, that's LucasArts, but and then also the sad stuff with that Star Wars 1313 game that looked really interesting is basically canceled. I mean, they're saying that because what LucasArts is no longer a publisher developer, but they are handling licensing out those licenses to other developers. So that doesn't mean that we're never going to get other Star Wars games.
But we're not going to get as good Star Wars games, I feel.
Probably not. It does it feels like that means that Disney is now focused, does not want to focus on making games internally, and so kicking it off to other developers. Yeah, it's still possible that we'll get really great Star Wars. I mean, we will get some great Star Wars games here and there in the future, but it does the general quality will probably be in decline, I'm guessing.
I guess what just depresses me about it is we know in 2015 Star Wars Episode 7 there will be games with that. There's no way they're not going to let that chance go by, and I think it would have been really cool if they had been able to just use LucasArts and have them make what maybe could be a great Star Wars game to go along with it. And just because there would be, I would assume, a steady stream of Star Wars games with the new trilogy, that might have been one reason to be excited about a new trilogy, might give them license to make some good new games. And again, we don't know who they will ultimately license these out to, but keep in mind, Disney does make a lot of tie-in games, and they're like, the Cars 2 game. They're not good, and that worries me a little bit.
And it's sort of like all, just this part of like the sad stuff in having like that transfer of all the Lucas stuff going over to Disney. Like they canceled the Clone Wars show. Even like I haven't caught up to where it is now, and I hear that like that ending is kind of a series finale, but was not intended to be totally a series finale. Like they didn't like think the show was going to get canceled. So all that stuff kind of sucks.
Yeah, now I'm getting pretty cynical about Disney owning Lucasfilm at this point because we thought
I have always been cynical about that.
I know, but I think now there's like proof because before I think one of the reasons possibly for optimism is that Disney has all these resources and maybe some of the great things the larger Lucas world has been doing Disney could support. Very clearly they have no interest in supporting anything outside of the movies that they're going to pour hundreds of millions of dollars into. Yeah. And that is a bummer, and that to me it completely destroys any optimism that was there at the start, and it's too bad.
Yeah, it seems like Disney is getting a lot more involved with the Star Wars stuff than they ever did when they purchased Marvel. Like, obviously there was some like stuff with the animated series going on with Marvel, but Marvel has always had trouble with its animated series.
Right.
But, Disney never got, as far as I'm aware, never touched the comic book stuff. There's no perceivable difference to me. And obviously, the Marvel Studios films are still the Marvel Studios films.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and obviously it's sad 150 people are losing their jobs because of the LucasArts thing, so that's quite a big layoff. It's a bummer, but oh well.
Yeah,
we also, in terms of another piece of news that came out today, we're recording this podcast on Tuesday, a couple days late here just because of scheduling conflicts. But we learned, this is separate, but this reminded me of it. Did you hear today about the new Batman Arkham City game?
Yeah, Batman Arkham Origins.
Which has nobody involved with the first two games.
Yeah, Rocksteady's not working on it. It's a different, WB interactive
So I don't give a shit. Do you give a shit, Sean?
I mean, I'm waiting to see what comes out from that game, because it's not going to be probably as good as the Rocksteady games, but it will be built on a really good base. So... there are other developers that can make Batman games than Rocksteady. So it's I'm not immediately writing that game off, but I'm also not going if Rocksteady was saying, "Oh, we're making Batman Arkham Asylum 3," I would be I'm buying that game no matter what. This one, I was wait to see what they're going to do with it. I'm happy that means that this is not the project that Rocksteady is working on, because this is where all those rumors were coming out about a Silver Age story or a Batman origin story, using the Arkham games that that is not the next Rocksteady game I want, because, how many fucking times have we seen a Batman origin story? For God's sakes, we don't need another one, and there are story threads left over from Arkham City I want to see finished, so hopefully that means that, next year or 2 years from now, the Rocksteady Batman game will, top off the proper Arkham series.
And I guess that's when I say I don't give a shit. It's just that Arkham City to me is, the ultimate Batman game, and I don't... Unless you're going to go a step beyond that and innovate beyond that and really do something, push that further, I don't really need any other Batman game because I've got Arkham City on my shelf.
Well, it sounds like what they're going to try to do is, there aren't a whole lot of details, but from what I've read, they're going to make a much larger open world aspect to it. There's going to be fast travel and stuff like that. So, I'm kind of casually optimistic about it because I like the combat and stealth aspects of those games so much that it's I will probably end up buying this game. I probably won't buy it right when it comes out, but
yeah. In any case, we'll see how that develops. But we've talked long enough about other stuff. It is time to talk about Bioshock Infinite.
Yes.
So, if you have not played Bioshock Infinite, this is your last warning. Do not listen beyond this point. We'll do a quick countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Spoiler time. Sean.
Yes.
Bioshock Infinite. Where do you want to start this? Let's go. Overall thoughts? Best place to start? Yeah. All right.
That's how we usually do these things.
What did you think of Bioshock Infinite?
Well, yeah, I finished it a day after it came out, because I finished it in two really huge sittings, and so on the last podcast I talked a little bit about it, and my impressions have not changed all that much. I still think it is one of the best games I've played in recent memory. I think it's in terms of like how it handles narrative and character development, I think it's one of the most remarkable first-person shooters I've ever seen. And I think the gameplay is absolutely phenomenal. The character development, the story is absolutely phenomenal, and it's definitely, for me, a sort of a benchmark of what first-person shooters can be and can like do in terms of narrative in the future. So, glowing praise.
Yes, I would agree with everything you just said. I was totally blown away by Bioshock Infinite. My own history with the series, I played some of Bioshock 1 but never finished it. It just, I don't want to say it didn't grab me, because it grabbed me. I liked what I played, but I didn't, obviously didn't finish it, was not that invested in it. And so with Bioshock Infinite, I just, Sean said, you gotta play this game. I played the game, and I was blown away. My praise might even be more glowing than yours in terms of the superlatives I'm willing to use. I finished it a couple days ago, and I've been thinking about what superlatives I want to use. And I think it's definitely one of the best games I've ever played. I would probably put it in my personal top 5. And I don't know how that would shake out, but I'm thinking about last time I made a list of my 10 favorite video games, this would break that top 5. And then if I want to go further than that, I would also say this is without a doubt the best video game story in terms of just uniting character, thematic, and just literal plot elements into one. Fantastic. The last couple hours of Bioshock Infinite, and the last half hour in particular, is the most just viscerally powerful video game experience I have ever had, bar none. I felt physically different playing that game, and I think that's amazing. And I do, thinking about it even more, and the combat and everything, and how it ties in story and the characters while you're playing, I am prepared to say Bioshock Infinite may be, and I think is, my favorite first-person shooter campaign I've ever played.
Yeah, it's definitely... I would want to like get a little further away from the game before I said something like that, but it would definitely be up there. Like it would be like 1 or 2.
Yeah, I'm just thinking against the other first-person shooters I love, which would mainly be some of the Halo games and some others here and there. And I think what Bioshock Infinite does from both a gameplay standpoint and a narrative standpoint is a step up in terms of ambition and execution.
Yeah,
and I think it's so amazing how far we've come in this console generation, and that at the tail end...
Bioshock 1 came out near the beginning, it was 2007.
Yeah, so. and how we've developed to have a game like this still on this console. Not that this game is particularly feels like it's taxing the 360 for all it's worth in every moment, but it's like, graphically it's not necessarily the best game ever made or anything, but it really just does feel like gaming as an art form... long since came into its own, but this feels like just a step forward.
Yeah.
In so many ways. So, one of the main things to talk about with Bioshock Infinite, obviously, is that the story is so developed, and the world is so incredibly well done and executed, and the characters, that we could do a whole podcast just on the text of the game and never touch the gameplay. And I think the most important place of this game, for points of discussion, is the text. So that's where we're going to start, but we will talk about gameplay later on, and if it comes up organically in the flow of this conversation. But Sean, I'll let you take it away. This is such a dense fucking game, textually.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
Well, I would say at the beginning, but there isn't a beginning. I mean, there's a beginning for like where you are presented the story, but in the context of the story itself, there is no beginning. Yeah. So I guess, Do
we want to start at the end and flower back from there?
I don't know. I don't fucking know. Like, this is such a complex fucking story.
I guess I'll start here.
Okay, you start. Where?
Well, I noted that those last 30 minutes of Bioshock Infinite were just superior for me, and just really viscerally powerful. And it's not just the final revelation, where you learn that Booker DeWitt is Zachary Comstock, and Zachary Comstock is Booker DeWitt, but that there are a bunch of build-ups to that, and that we have the steps of finding out Booker sold his own daughter, Anna DeWitt, who becomes Elizabeth.
Yeah.
That he went to get baptized because he did horrible things at Wounded Knee, and that is where the split in his personality occurs. And then within all this, we're learning this very large metatextual idea of how they're sort of viewing the universe in this game as this infinitude of possibilities.
Yeah.
And I guess the question I would pose to you, and maybe where to start this discussion, is, in the context of the game as a whole, how do you view the game differently and textually, and how do you read into this knowing everything you learned in those last 30 minutes?
Well, for me, it becomes very much... One, it becomes really obvious that up to that point, I thought the game was more about Elizabeth than it was about Booker, and that is wrong. The game is completely about Booker / Comstock. And then there's also sort of this revelation that what the game is in terms of its narrative, it is a dissection of how someone handles guilt and how that changes who they are, and you come to realize that once you know that Booker is Comstock and that they had that split off at the baptism after Wounded Knee, that everything that Columbia is represents that like sort of a deconstruction of that, and how Comstock has to learn to deal with that guilt in a completely different way than Booker. Because Booker takes that guilt on, he takes on that self-loathing, and he goes down this horrible, disgusting hole of like, he finds whoever the woman is that he has the child with, and I like how they keep that vague enough that you don't know what that relationship was like. You don't know if like he just knocked up some girl and it's like just has this baby and he doesn't know what to do with it. You don't know if he actually like found a decent relationship with another woman or something. But then he has like falls into gambling debt, probably alcoholism, and then he ends up selling his daughter to get rid of his gambling debt. And so that Booker becomes a horrible person, but for completely different reasons. That Comstock then becomes a horrible person, and that Comstock has to learn and figure out how to justify his actions at the massacre at Wounded Knee. So he becomes a religious zealot. He buys into racism, this sort of idea of American exceptionalism, that the America of the past is like the purest, like America that we should strive for. So it's okay to just massacre a bunch of Native Americans. And so I think it becomes really fascinating that completely recolors everything about the game in a much more substantial way than, like, you can see ghosts, or Bruce Willis is a ghost.
I agree. I think this is something I said to you the other day. This is what M. Night Shyamalan is always trying to do, and fails in every single one of his movies. Yeah. Sixth Sense included, I believe. I just think, a twist is not something that comes out of left field just to fuck with you. It's something that comes out of, that is not predictable, that then adds to your understanding of the story being told. Yeah.
And it just adds it, completely recontextualizes your understanding in the case of this story.
And you were moving backwards there with your analysis, and that's really, I really like what you said there. And what I would say going from a forward standpoint is that throughout Bioshock Infinite, you are presented with these massive ideas, the thematic ideas for a video game, but let alone any piece of art to take on. Like you said, American exceptionalism, racism, sexism, classism, sort of the nature of religion and the role of guilt and all these things that come into play. And these are all very, very big ideas. And I think the game does a spectacular job handling all of them throughout, but it isn't until those last 30 minutes when they all become intensely personalized and intensely humanized that I think the brilliance of the game shines through, is that it is able to take the biggest of big discussions you can have. It is a socio-political game in its themes, and just get them all down to one choice a person makes, and really understand that these big human institutions that we have and where they come from, they are human institutions. They come from human ideas and human failings. And I think that's so much of what Bioshock Infinite is about, and I think that's what the punch of that game is, and that's why those last 30 minutes just hurt, and they really hurt well. They really get under your skin, because you start to realize how much the capacity for all these big things we talk about all the time in our world, these are all very relevant issues today, come from us, and they come from an internal spot. And it just so happens that, when you have enough people that are dealing with these issues, these things come out, and they give rise to these bigger institutions. So it's very hard to talk about. The game just has so much going on.
Yeah, and it definitely, because of how that game completely recontextualizes everything you see. But I guess we should go back and start where the game starts.
Yes,
Booker. And look at that.
Booker DeWitt is on a boat.
He is on a boat, yes. And he's on that boat multiple times. He is on that boat. He will be on that boat. He was on that boat. He will always be on that boat.
Do we want to talk about that then for a
metaphysics?
second?
I think we need to talk about it. Yeah, I think that's where you have to start with this game, is just address the metaphysics of it. And that, yes, the game deals with multiple worlds in a way that I find really interesting. I like how they keep it relatively vague, and it's a much more intelligent way of handling it than something like how DC Comics does it, where DC Comics adopted this multiverse idea basically to justify their multiple continuities of, we can't how can we justify having this Superman from the 1950s who can carry chains of planets across galaxies, and our Superman from the 1990s that can't do that shit. So that's how DC handled that. And I like this. I like how they keep it vague of how these multiple worlds exist. It's it seems like it has to do with a very similar idea to DC of you have these branching choices, and every single choice creates like different universes that other choices explored in that universe, and there's like all these possibilities that expand out. And I think one of the most interesting things is how you try to deal with trying to actually stop something from happening when you realize there are infinite or near infinite universes. So how does our choice have any meaning if we like how can we try to stop something if it's always happening in another universe, and like how it like makes everything feel very futile.
Yeah, and in that middle portion of the game, when you start exploring multiple universes, one of the most interesting things to me is that so often our presentation of multiple universes in fiction is that one little thing changes everything. That's not what happens for much of Bioshock Infinite. It's, in one universe Chen-Li is dead, in one he's alive, and that's the difference. That's not, it's not rippling out that now, everyone in Columbia is Chinese or something. Like, which I feel is like what a lot of lesser stories would do.
Yeah.
It really is, you're going through these, and it's what's haunting about those parts is you're realizing these little choices and the little differences you're seeing, and as the game goes along, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And they have to, but it does take a passage of time and a bigger understanding of how this universe works and a sort of almost transcendence of consciousness for these characters. Yeah. Especially when Elizabeth, you destroy the cipher.
Mm-hmm. Siphon.
Yeah, that thing.
Cipher, they're not to destroy the cipher so nobody can find out who Elizabeth is.
Yes.
It's a very different plot.
Yes. So anyway, but where are we going with this?
I don't know. So
okay, but there's that great sequence in that, basically the start of what I would call the last sort of half hour, the last big cutscene kind of thing, where you go to the lighthouse again, and you basically see these multiple lighthouses, these infinite lighthouses, and basically, to me, what's so fascinating about that is it again comes down to this very basic human element of it's showing you, basically, choices can lead to an infinity because the life is just the choices you make, and that's kind of what it's boiling down to. And this, I think, is kind of a basic element of the game. But you were talking yesterday when we kind of were prepping this podcast about how that's a really interesting analogy for video games.
Yeah, it's something that Bioshock 1 did, and this is like what everybody remembers from Bioshock 1, is that in Bioshock 1, you, about 2/3 of the way through the game, the good 2/3 of the game, you realize that the entire game has actually been like a deconstruction and justification for the fact that your protagonist is a silent protagonist, and like it looks at that and sort of like your lack of agency in the story and like contextualizes that, and that was like sort of what everyone was looking at is like, oh, it deconstructs player agency in a video game. And I like how Bioshock Infinite does the exact same thing in a completely different way, where with the multiple realities, what like you're kind of presented, because I like they use the visual of the lighthouse, which is carried over from Bioshock 1. That's where you start the game in Bioshock 1, is you go into this lighthouse and go down to Rapture. In Bioshock Infinite, you go to a lighthouse and you go up to Columbia. And like having that like lighthouse be a symbol of like, this is what all these games are. And so when you're presented these, like this sea of infinite lighthouses that extend as far as you can see, and that's like, these are like all these different realities, and then you can see out of this one, here's this other Booker, and this other Elizabeth having the same conversation we're having right now, coming out of that lighthouse. You realize it's really, this is me playing this game, and that like, not literally, but like, in like a metaphysical sense, that is someone else playing that game over there, that's that Booker and that Elizabeth, and those are all just different people playing the game, and they have this explanation of constants and variables, and why the lighthouse pops up all the time is because it is this constant. It's like, in terms of Doctor Who, it's like a fixed point in time, and I like they don't try to deal with why do constants exist, like what makes a constant, because that's not the point of the game, is try to completely like create this realistic sense of a metaphysical world. But with the constants and the variables of, you always have a lighthouse, you always have a man, there's always a city. It also creates this like system by which you recognize every single game and every person's playthrough of a game is also composed of constants and variables. That all the like major story moments and those dialogue beats are all constants. Everybody experiences those, and they all experience them basically in the same way. But then there are certain choices that are like a big obvious choices throughout the game, like you can give Elizabeth a bird pendant or a cage pendant that is different for different people.
Which one did you do?
I did bird.
I did bird also.
Because it seems like it'd be a pretty fucked up thing to put on this girl, imp psychon of a cage, when she's been locked up in a cage for her like entire life up to this point.
That was my thought process too.
Dickish thing to do. It's like, put on the bird one. I don't want you to be reminded every time you look in the mirror. It's like, oh, I was held captive for my entire life.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, like, and those are, like, the big obvious variables that, like, change. And then I also like how they even have one of those very similar moments at the beginning of the game where you flip the coin, but the coin always comes up heads. And it's like, that is a constant. And it's like, there is no choice there. It's just that, for whatever reason, that coin always comes up heads. Like, the reason is because they programmed the game to be that way. But it's like, I like how they contextualize that within the video game universe. And then there are also the obvious, like smaller variables in just how each player like approaches certain combat situations, which players find which gear, which players like engage in which little like side off the beaten path little like conversations with Elizabeth and stuff like that. So their use of the multiverse, since everybody else is playing these games and like playing them in different ways, their idea of a multiverse contextualizes that with like our actual physical reality, which is kind of fucking crazy.
It is. It's yes, it's very trippy in a certain sense.
It's just kind of just fun to think about. That's what I love about like metaphysical like multiverse shit. It's just a lot of fun to think about.
It is.
Like when they presented this well in a story, because there's so many different little like things you can piece together.
It really is, and I think that's the foundation. I think we need to tackle the game now from a chronological standpoint. Is understanding that this is kind of where we're coming from, and I think as we go through, maybe we can talk about little theories about where are we in the multiverse at various times or things like that, because it is so fascinating to dissect these issues, because the game really does. It's open-ended in a good way, and I think this is actually another thing I want to lay a foundation for as we talk about it, is Sean and I took a lot of shit last year when we talked about the train wreck known as Prometheus.
Yes, the flaming piece of shit.
Yes, Prometheus from Ridley Scott, flaming piece of shit of a movie, and one of the reasons we despised it is because the movie is just broken, it is wrong about itself, it is not open-ended, it is just dumb. And yet,
that movie really isn't open-ended. A lot of people try to look at it that way, but no, it's not. Like that movie ends with, we're going to go try to find paradise, quite literally.
Yeah, and so anyway, we got a lot of shit from the screaming Prometheus fanboys on comments and stuff about how, you guys just can't accept a movie that's supposed to be interpretive and supposed to be, open-ended and all these things.
I know we go over this a lot, but it's like, for me, here's the fucking thing about that. Because we live in a world where, in terms of literary criticism, post-structuralism is the, accepted mode of how we, deconstruct literature, or that carries forth, movies and video games. And that basically is, everybody has their own interpretation, that it's fine that everyone has their own interpretation, and a lot of people, take that to mean that if a piece of work has all these different interpretations, that means that that piece of work is valuable. I don't necessarily buy into that. But the thing is, when you're talking about how you interpret a work, you're not saying you're trying to interpret what literally textually happens in the work. That's not what's valuable about it. You're not trying to figure out what literally happened. You're trying to, people have different interpretations of the themes or character motivations.
Why does it happen?
Yeah, and, the meaning of lines of dialogue, not what the dialogue fucking is. And that's, what Prometheus is, a lot of people try to do this, why is everybody stupid? Just why is everybody stupid? Everybody's just stupid, and trying to figure out what the fuck is actually just happening. And that's not, multiple interpretations of that is not what we're talking about.
Yeah, and so this ties back into Bioshock Infinite in that this is what we're talking about when you're taking a story that can be observed from that post-structuralist view of thought.
Yeah.
In that what literally happens is something that you can see very clearly because Bioshock Infinite tells and lays out its story clearly and coherently and very powerfully.
Yeah.
And then there's lots of interpretive points out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very clever in that where you have all the pieces you need to play with the story of the game. But you don't get to make up the fucking story.
Yeah.
To fill in gaps. That's not what it is.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're talking about, and obviously lots of interpretive points along the way here. But Bioshock Infinite is good interpretive.
Yeah.
There is a difference.
I certainly think so.
Yes. So, Sean, beginning. Let's go.
Okay. Booker, you're on the boat. You always were on the boat. You always will be on the boat. I think it's a really good thing if you've, it's really helpful if you've read Slaughterhouse 5 before you play this game, because they play with the tense of, words so much.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I just love all those conversations the Lutece have about, it's very, very, Kurt Vonnegut, Douglas Adams, about the tense of words with when you start introducing time travel and things like that.
Yeah. And sort of that sense of predestination. But yeah, you're on a boat, and rowing the boat are the Lutece twins, who are Jennifer Hale voices one of them, which I like. She's the voice of Fem Shep.
Yep.
It's always
one of my
good to see her.
favorite voice actresses. And I love the Lutesses.
Yeah, the Lutesses are probably, like, outside of, like, the main two, Booker and Elizabeth, they're my favorite characters in the game.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're fucking crazy.
They are.
They're crazy in a really awesome way. And they're actually one of the most... Whenever I would pick up an audio log, it's like I was always really excited if it was one of the Lutess audio logs, because that was one of the most fun aspects of the story to try to piece together is, who the fuck are these fucking people who, like, got Dr. Manhattan and now are just, like, part of, like just devoid, like, been dejected from all of space and time, and they can just fuck around and do whatever they want.
Is there an audio log that explains why that occurs?
Yeah, it's Fink, like, Comstock wants to have them killed because he doesn't want them having that much power, and this after he has Elizabeth, so he can use her power to do his profit shit, so he doesn't need them anymore, so he has Fink try to kill them, but, like, so Fink tries to mess with their machines to kill them, and they, I think, from what I interpreted, they do get Dr. Manhattan, like, their atoms get, like, scattered about, like, cross multiple realities, but then they're able to sort of, like, pull their consciousness together, and by being scattered across realities, they are, like, kind of like Elizabeth. They have powers, but they have, like, unbelievably higher powers than Elizabeth because, like, all their atoms are in all different universes.
Yes.
So,
okay,
that's kind of how that is explained.
Awesome. They are both funny and insightful.
Yeah, and I just love the idea of that Lutess found, like, a male version of herself from a parallel universe, and that's, like, who that other dude is, and they communicated through each other, like, using those machines, and then eventually she brought him over, and it's, like, it's just, I like this idea of, like, you found, like, this, like, the opposite gendered version of yourself in a parallel world, and, like, all of a sudden, like, paired up, like, brother and sister, and you just go around together all the time. I don't know, there's something about that idea that I think is really cool.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
All right. So you're on the boat. Lutess twins are there.
Yeah, but you don't row, because he doesn't row.
And he never will.
Yeah.
Never was.
And so, yeah, you go to the lighthouse, which, this is, like, one of the craziest things about this game, is I love how, you know, I played all through Bioshock 1 multiple times, and I like how... When you go to that lighthouse, I was just like, oh, this is just like a cool little, like, throwback to Bioshock 1. It's like, you know, that's how Bioshock 1 started. And then when you get to the end of the game, you're like, this actually had a lot of significance that this is the exact same way that Bioshock 1 started.
Yeah.
It's like one of the cooler recontextualizations of the game, because you literally go back to this beginning. But you get to the lighthouse, you know, you just sort of, like, wake up, you know, find the girl, wipe away the debt. They open up your little, like, thing, you have a picture of Elizabeth. You go up to the lighthouse, and you ring a couple of bells. You go up and you go into Columbia, the flying city in the sky. What?
I want to ask you something.
Sure.
In the lighthouse, you explore it because that's what you do in Bioshock Infinite. Is you explore.
Yeah. This is definitely a game where you look at every single nook and cranny, because there's always something in those nooks and crannies.
And in one of those nooks and crannies in the lighthouse is a dead guy with a bucket over his head.
Yeah.
Who is the dead guy?
He's the keeper of the lighthouse. This is my interpretation of that, is that he's the keeper of the lighthouse. That Comstock was going to have him kill Booker, because Comstock knows that Booker's going to try to go up, because Comstock has access to some of those future-seeing powers, and Lutess killed him, and then killed him in such a mysterious way to motivate Booker to go up, because I think multiple times Booker got to the lighthouse, but Booker decided not to go through with it, because there wasn't, he just, kind of backed out at the last moment, because you find out that this is... When you actually go up there with, the coin flipping thing, you find out this is, I think the 123rd time this has happened, because there are 122 tally marks on their board of heads. So you know that they have been going through this cycle over and over and over and over and over again. So, that's sort of the interpretation I take of that. I think that's the interpretation most people do, because they don't, ever, strictly explain. When you go back, it's not like Booker kills the dude or something, which is kind of what I was expecting to happen.
Yeah. You don't think it's something super crazy that, that's another Booker?
It could be. There's no... I don't see... it could be, but I don't see what that would have to do with anything. I don't see where, significance... that's what a bunch of people had, were saying online. It was that's probably another Booker. It's well, that's a cool idea, but why would it be another... you're just saying it because it sounds fucking cool. I agree. It sounds fucking cool. But that... So what? Why would it be another Booker? What would that accomplish?
I admit I'm at a bit of a loss thinking about it.
Yeah, I don't know why people... I mean, I think that was, a theory that a lot of people had when they, got to that point in the game. They realized multiple universes, but since they never did anything with it, people were, kind of disappointed, so they just kind of pretend that something happened with it.
All right, other theory. It's the last Elizabeth who we do not see disappear at the end.
Even though it's clearly a dude. It's, really obviously a guy.
She's cross-dressing now.
Sure. Okay, fine.
That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. All right. He goes up into Colombia. Great moment. Really cool.
Really awesome. I like how it's the complete opposite of the original Bioshock, where in the original Bioshock, I mean, in two different ways. In the original Bioshock, you go under the sea instead of up into the sky. But in the original Bioshock, when you go down to Rapture, it's really quiet. It's like there's nothing really going on. You just like slowly reveals it, and you have like this like the Bioshock theme playing. And then Bioshock Infinite, you like ring those bells, and first nothing happens, and then you hear like boom, and you're like, did someone playing a trailer for a movie because it's making the movie trailer sound, and it keeps on doing that. Then like all these lights flash, and it's super bombastic and in your face, and then you like get in the chair and get like rocketed up into the fucking sky.
Yep.
It seems like there might be a like safer way to try to get people to Colombia than just like shooting them the fuck up there like a giant cannon.
But it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking cool.
And I think we should also mention here, just like when we were playing this game for the first time, like for me, this was so fascinating when you get to Colombia, because at first it seems like this really is a utopia. It's fascinating. It's beautiful. And I think that sense of discovery is so finely tuned in this game, where they dole out the information they want you to have so precisely, and it's really about your exploration, your agency of piecing the story together for those first couple hours of what is Colombia, and you just start to realize, holy shit, I have gone to hell, because this is a horrible, horrible place.
Yeah, and I love how that first like hour or so, it might be actually more than an hour, there's like no combat whatsoever. It's like you get to the lighthouse, you go up to Colombia, you explore around Colombia, you go to the fair. It's like there's just no combat. It's all just you exploring, trying to figure out what's going on, and I really like that. I really like how because with Bioshock, obviously Bioshock 1's a very different setting, so it makes a lot more sense that you get thrown right into combat. But Bioshock 1, you get into combat almost right away. It's like, you run out, you get your wrench, and you have to beat a dude to death.
Yeah.
So, but with this, it's like you have this long time of like, there's just no violence, there's nothing happening. And I like how, like you said, it does kind of seem like a utopia at first. But there's like a lot of, the first way you're introduced to it, like when you're actually on Columbia, is you're in that sort of
I forgot about this
the
part.
Baptism area.
It's so great,
Yeah, where, you come in and you don't realize the significance of all the baptism. Like, obviously the baptism stuff has significance outside of your understanding of the ending, but it has extra significance where you realize the reason why, I think the main reason why everybody has to go through that at the beginning is because that's what Comstock, that was his defining moment in his life, where Comstock completely, got rid of his old name, he completely changed everything about himself, and so, obviously Comstock would then have everybody that comes up to Columbia has to go through that exact same experience, and then they also have the same preacher dude is there, as from when you get baptized when you go back to the past.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's blind, so it makes sense why he would recognize you.
What I was going to say also, I guess I forgot about that part, but yeah, that is such a powerful part where you get into that church, and it is very unsettling. So
it's really beautiful, but really creepy, because it's like so overbearing with how, like, with the Christian iconography.
Mm-hmm. And I guess what I was going to say about the utopia aspect is that before you go into the chapel area underground there, it's in the sky, so I guess there's no underground, but when you're in that chapel...
Underground is relative.
Yes. But anyway, you do see Columbia from a more holistic view, and that's when it looks like this is a really beautiful place they've designed, and then immediately there's this unsettling aspect, so once you get out of the church, you just always have this sense of there's something beneath the surface of this city there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And, even if you're someone who doesn't distrust religion the way I do or Sean does, it's, there's something about those scenes in that chapel that are creepy.
Yeah, especially like the way they have the thing where the guy, when he baptizes you, he like holds you down and like that is not how you're supposed to baptize people. And it's like, but that is the way some organization, like really extreme organizations, have baptized people in the past, because that cuts off oxygen to your brain, which makes you more susceptible to hallucinations, which if you're having a hallucination while you're getting baptized, is going to be more of like religious based, which is a very easy way to make someone a religious fanatic, which is like, this is my interpretation of like one of the reasons why Comstock became the way he was. Because I think there is like an audio log where he says when he got baptized he had a vision of an angel or something like that. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, I like that detail of like, again, like this like sort of, it's very unsettling because it's like all of a sudden there's this very violent action of you being half drowned and then like sort of like just dumped into the city. Yeah. And then once you get into the city, this is one of my favorite parts of sort of like the Columbia iconography, is how they worship the founding fathers as if they were like saints, because they've got Father Washington, Father Jefferson, and Father Franklin, which all the dudes worshipping Benjamin Franklin, that's fine. Benjamin Franklin was an awesome fucking dude. Like, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington were pretty cool, but not saints. Like, not someone you'd worship. Benjamin Franklin, totally. Fuck yeah.
Sure.
I was just like, if like anybody came up to me and it's like, I worship Father Franklin, I was like, you're okay, dude. I'm not going to shoot you.
Yeah.
It's like, those other crazy people, they're dead, but you're cool.
Yeah. And I think, obviously, this is where we start to see very clear parallels between then and now in their vision of Columbia, which is very clearly tied to past America, but is also very tied to present America, because there is this ongoing deification in modern America of the Founding Fathers, and sort of a total disregard for anything they said or did, but a deification because you have to have... If you make the people who found our country God, and then you try to say they would want this, it's a way of trying to make yourself seem more plausible.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely sort of like a lot of the like basic political understanding. This is like not just unique to America. It's like any country has this sort of sense of like how it started is very holy, and it's like it is very, you don't. It's something like, it's like you wouldn't try to ever repeal anything in the Bill of Rights or like anything like basic in the Constitution, other than we don't talk about the slavery stuff in the Constitution. But, like there's that sense of like, that's very taboo of like being anything against like sort of the aspect of the founding of the country, because, like that's the most basic sense of loyalty to a country you could possibly have. And so like, but here it's just like extremely heightened to again, like, this is also, like, one of the more unsettling parts when you get into Colombia is, like, this is really creepy. Like, you're, like, these people, as soon as you get out there, there are just a bunch of people worshipping statues of these guys. It's like, that's weird. I don't know, why are you doing that?
Yep. And then you have the carnival.
Yeah.
And the carnival seems perfectly pleasant.
Well, yeah, but I mean, before that, you go and you have a long walk through Colombia.
That's true.
I would not jump right to the carnival yet.
You're right.
Because this is where I like how after you have that very unsettling introduction to Colombia, then nothing really bad happens. There's no sense of anything like really sinister until you get into the carnival stuff. You're just sort of like walking through Colombia trying to get there. And actually, it's interesting because it does... At least to me, it did have this sense of, like, it's got this very, obviously this takes place before the 1950s, but now we would think of, like, the 1950s as being, like, this, like, really wholesome example of, like, you just leave it to Beaver, you've got, like, the nuclear family, and the white picket fence, and all that shit. And it's, like, that's sort of that idea of, like, everyone was really wholesome, everyone had morals, even though, there's all the communist shit where you're, like, throwing people in jail and, like, just, like, it was not wholesome, but like you have that idea of it, and it's like this has that very same conception about the founding of the country, but there is always with that sense that even if this isn't right, it's still like it's so happy and cheery and seems so perfect on the outside. That facade is so well realized that you do get the sense of like, this isn't so bad. Like, all these people are really happy. They're just, like, going about their daily lives. Like, everything's super clean. Everything's really nice. Nobody's, like, being mean. There's no, like, sense of, like, there's crime or anything going on around here. And you do get the sense of, like, this is, like, a decent place to live. It's, sort of like, the gated community in real life.
Right.
And you're like, this seems okay. But then you go on, you get into the carnival, and then you hear about, like, the Vox Populi in the background, and some of the carnival games are, like, you shoot the Vox Populi guys, and it's, like, so you get the sense of, like, there are some people in this world that do not like the way this world is, that they're trying to upset the balance, but again, it's still very subtle, and then you get into the carnival, and there's, like, and every time and I love this, just as you're moving throughout this world, even before you get to the carnival, you hear people talking about, we need to get to the raffle's going on, because it's like, it's Columbia's founding day, we've got a raffle, it's like, we got our ticket, it's like, let's go, and so you keep on hearing about the raffle, and then eventually you get to the raffle, and it's like, and you pull out a ticket, you get number 77, and you win, and they hand you a baseball, and then the curtains open up on the stage, and you see this, like, interracial couple, this, like, white man and this, or I think it's a black man and a white woman, come out, and it's, like, has, like, this, like, really, like, messed up version of Here Comes the Bride playing, and there's, like, these, like, monkeys that are, like, racist stereotypes of, like, African Americans up there, and your prize for winning the raffle is throwing a baseball at this interracial couple. And it's like, this is fucked up. It's like, I like how they, like, they literally pull the curtain back, and this is what this place is actually like, and I like how it's kind of over the top, but it is in a very believable sense of, like, in an extremely racist society, this is the kind of shit that goes on.
Yes.
And it's like, and nobody else here thinks this is wrong or weird in any way.
And that's when
you threw the baseball at the interracial couple, because you're they totally deserve it, right?
I did not do that.
That's the way you play these games.
I did not do that. I did not do that.
As you were playing this game, you were constantly telling me stories about how you're just, like, on the docks and you just, like, blew this woman's head off right in front of their child.
And I did do that, but I did not throw the baseball at the interracial couple.
Okay, so murder of a family right in front of a kid. That's totally okay?
I'm not saying it's okay, but you are slandering me when you say I threw the baseball at the interracial couple. I would not do that shit.
Okay.
That is cruel. That is unusual punishment for you to say that to me.
What? Anyways, so you threw the baseball at the interracial couple.
No!
I decided, I'm not going to do that. Fuck this, like, creepy asshole up here. I'm going to try to throw my baseball at him.
Do we want to mention, though, that this is the first major variable in the game? In terms of...
Although, since neither of us picked the other choice, I don't know what actually happens. But maybe the whole game's different. Like, maybe it's like you throw it at them and it's like everyone's like, hey, this guy's okay. And you're like, this place isn't so bad. It's like, they know the way things are up here. And then you just go about your daily life. You forget about Elizabeth. You're like, nobody gives a shit about my debt up here. Nobody knows about that fucking shit. So I'm just going to live out my life up here in, like, the racist paradise that this place is.
It's a 2-hour-long game.
That actually be kind of fucking fantastic if that's the way it was. Or it's like, if Ken Levine, the lead designer, was like, no, fuck these guys.
Yeah.
If you're going to do this, like, you're such a fucked up person if you chose this option, you don't even get to play the game. It's like, you get to have this, like, weird little story where it's like, you go, like, you play, like, another hour and then, like, something happens. It's like this fake ending to the game. You're like, fuck you guys.
But the credit still has Troy Baker and
Courtney Draper playing, like, the song. And then they just, like, gray out the new game option so you can't even try again.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen. No.
All right, we both threw the baseball at the guy running the raffle.
Yeah.
And then you shove that...
Yeah, and then, like, a cop grabs your hand, and it's like another cop comes up to you with the skyhook, and and the guy's about to hit you with the skyhook, and then you, like, deflect it and make the skyhook stab into another dude's face, tearing his fucking face off and causing blood to go everywhere. And this is what I really like about this moment, is that it, like, up to this point, there has been no violence whatsoever, and the first act of violence in this game is so unbelievably brutal and just, like, in your fucking face. It's so just, like,
literally in the guy's face.
Yeah. And then to the point where he no longer has a face.
Yes.
And it's like one of the weird things, like, one of the points where there's been, like, some criticism online that I've read the point at which I most disagree with people criticizing Bioshock Infinite is people saying, like, the violence has no place, and it's like, this game is too violent. There's one article, I think, on Polygon that had, like, the worst, like, headline I've ever seen, where it's Bioshock Infinite's violence limits its audience, where it's like, that's maybe, but no, like, I don't give a shit. It's like, I think, like, the violence being so over the top, and especially, like, here, the first act of it being so brutal and so gory, I think it's like the game is trying to do something with that. I think,
absolutely.
Like, it's not just being a game and having the violence being very violent. And it does have that nice side effect of, something like Gears of War, where it being so brutal and bloody makes it feel very visceral and helps make the combat feel more satisfying in, like, just a pure gameplay sense. But in terms of, like, a narrative sense, at a certain point, you are just like, I'm doing some messed up shit to these people.
I think that's a constant theme, and to me, I mean, you're talking about the actual, like, visual cutscene of you putting the guy's face in the skyhook, but what to me is even more brutal and visceral than that is that immediately you have control again, you have the skyhook, and the only way you can kill this courtyard full of cops is to cut their faces off.
Yeah.
And you have to go bash, and you just feel like a monster in this moment, but there's nothing else you can do, because you would die if you did anything else.
Yeah.
And so it's just this, it's very much, that also feels very meta about the nature of gaming, is like, is this what you really want? All right. And then you have it, and it's like, I don't know if this is what I want. And I actually think that balance is kept for most of the game.
Yeah.
Where I don't think the point of the combat in Bioshock Infinite is ever 100% to be fun. I think almost all of it is thought-provoking in one way or another. It is very provocative violence, and I think every element of the gameplay, and we'll talk about the gameplay later, is structured to create that feeling.
Yeah, and it definitely does. Like, one thing you have to realize while you're playing the game is that Booker is not a nice guy. Like, not by any stretch of the imagination. Like, he becomes kind of an okay dude by the end of the game, a little bit, but he is a fucking bastard throughout that entire game. Yeah. And that is part of who he, like, that is part of why that combat is so violent, because it's not trying to, like, shove that aside. That is, like, you know, you are fucking killing people. Like, there's blood everywhere. Like, you're blowing people's heads off. This is a violent, violent action. Booker is a violent, violent man. This is a violent world. Like, it is trying to make sort of a point about it. It's not just there because it's a video game.
Right, and when you first meet Elizabeth, and we'll get to this later on in depth, but, you know, when she first sees you kill, she runs away screaming, because you can't... It's not something that... They don't go for the easy moments, where in games when you have, you know, missions where you have to go protect another person, that never comes up. The violence is something separate from the diegesis of the story. Here they are always one and the same.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth always has to deal with this, and you always have to deal with this. And I think it goes back to the point we were talking about earlier with the idea of constants and variables. The way you approach the violence in the game is in and of itself a variable, and it says something about you. For instance...
Yeah, for instance, when you go onto a dock and there's just, like, unarmed civilians out there going about their business, there's a mother tending to her child, and you just go behind her with a shotgun, put it in the back of her head, and blow her fucking head off right in front of the kid. That's how you play that game.
When I did it in front of a kid, I usually beat the mother to death. I didn't... I reserved the shotgun for... When I was going to face someone, I used a shotgun because I wanted to see them, like, explode. Well, if it's someone's, like, back turned to me where they're, like, kneeling with their son, then I would use the skyhook and beat them to death.
It's wonderful. Like, you know, I was saying, like, Booker is a bastard when I was playing the game. Man, when you were playing the game, he was just a fucking psychopath.
Pretty much.
It's like, you must have a very different reading on that character than I do.
Oh, I do. It was all part of, you know, the diegesis of the game for me. This is what Booker was. So, yes.
Raging psychopath.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, in like games criticism, there is this term that's come up. It's called ludonarrative dissonance, which is like applies to that very idea of that the gameplay and the story are at odds. Something sort of like, I think really good examples are Grand Theft Auto 4 and Red Dead Redemption, where Grand Theft Auto 4 and Red Dead, it's like more Grand Theft Auto 4 is about a story of Nico trying to get out of this like really violent world of gangsters, but all the gameplay is you killing people and like slaughtering people, and it's just like, dude, just if you want to get out of this like this like really violent world, just do it. Like multiple points in that story, it's just like you could just fucking walk away and you've got like $1 million. Everybody who hates you is dead at this point. Stop trying to make more enemies, goddammit. And
the one that always reminds that hurts Grand Theft Auto 4 to me is the mission where you rob the bank and have to kill about 500 cops.
Yeah. Or it's just like, no, don't do that, Miko. Like, there's no good reason. You don't need money.
And also, that would be considered a terrorist attack. That would totally alter the fabric of that game, and it doesn't change anything.
Yeah. So, and it's one of the things I like about Bioshock Infinite. And it's weird because some people have leveled this criticism at the game, again, like with the violence. It's like, I think Bioshock Infinite is a game that really neatly like avoids the ludonarrative dissonance. I think like the violence is appropriately contextualized and is characterized effectively in the game. That like Booker is a man who does this stuff, and it's like, and so you are doing this stuff as Booker, and it's not like this weird, like Half-Life where you are playing a fucking theoretical physicist who's never fired a goddamn gun in his life and is all of a sudden able to take on multiple squads of trained elite Marines.
Yeah.
It's like this is appropriate for in the context of the story, and most games have a really big problem trying to do that.
I also think we're getting into a lot of gameplay discussions, but I think that's fine. This is part of the story. I think the difficulty of the game, this is a very tough game. We actually haven't talked about this. I thought it was a very hard game in parts, and I think part of what helps contextualize that for me is the difficulty is such that you do feel like you never quite have the total upper hand. Like, this is a struggle for Booker DeWitt. He is not... Near the end, he's kind of a god in terms of how much power he has.
Yeah.
But even then, the stakes are always...
Yeah, but then they, ramp up how much shit you have to face, that it's like, well, you are a lot more powerful. Now all of a sudden you're having to fight, 5 Iron Patriots and shit like that.
And so that's what I was going to say, is just that you don't... you are not... It's like what you just said. Gordon Freeman in the Half-Life series can take on, 5 squads, and it doesn't make any sense. There is a ludonarrative dissonance there. Yeah. There is not, in terms of how Booker DeWitt approaches this, there is that challenge because he is not a super soldier. Yeah. He is a guy with training.
Yeah, he's a guy with training, and he's got the Vigors on his side, and the Lutets give him that, magnetic shield thing. Yeah. So he's got that going for him, but yeah, he's not Master Chief,
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway... Let's move on. We're like, what, a half hour into the game?
Yeah.
And an hour into our podcast?
Well, I think we're like an hour into the game. I mean, at least the way I played it.
Yeah.
It's like, at the beginning of that game, I was fucking... Because, like, part of, like, the big joy of Bioshock 1 was exploring the world, and so I immediately went to Bioshock Infinite with that mentality, and this has a much more focused, sort of, like, linear world because of the nature of the story with Elizabeth, because Bioshock 1 had a more, like, was still linear, but had a more open sort of structure to it, because it was about just exploring Rapture, but there's, like, so much shit packed everywhere in Bioshock Infinite. At the beginning, I was just like looking at everything, picking up every voxophone I could find, like looking at all the little kinetoscopes, just like eating just like pounds of hot dogs that people just leave lying around. That's like
you pick up so much shit in this game.
It's like gaping void of a stomach that you just like consume stuff. That's an example of the narrative dissonance of the game. That's something I wish they would have done something with. Is like it is. At a certain point, it gets fucking ridiculous. Just like you just go into a room and you're like, I'm going to consume everything that is here. It's like you just rifle through everything.
Or like, how many coins you're carrying on your person at a certain point.
It's like you just open up someone's desk drawer and there's just like cotton candy in there. And it's like I don't fucking know.
My favorite thing is that most of the cops have cotton candy on them, so you just take cotton candy off dead guys, probably covered in blood. And
it's just like it's not like a big deal. It's like it's one of the things that makes you realize like it's still a video game. It's like there's always going to be something where it's like they just need some sort of like normal health pickup in some areas that don't just completely refill your health like the medical kits. So food. It's like at a certain point there's chickens in the walls in Castlevania. Whatever.
It would be like complaining about having respawns. I mean, it's just
and it's also like it would be like complaining about how reloading makes no fucking sense because you just have this magical pool of ammo and just like flopping out a magazine just like you don't lose like the 4 bullets that were still in your pistol magazine when you ejected it. It's like whatever. Just ignore it because that's not what the gameplay is about.
Right. So anyway, moving on to the story, what happens next?
See where we at? You slaughtered dozens of cops.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, shit's gone down. I just gotta go find Elizabeth now. Like, no more dicking around at the fair.
Yeah.
I've gotta cut my way through.
Now it's like, the journey to Monument Island, basically.
Cut through the hordes of Columbia PD.
And that's when you also realize in this part of the game that the false shepherd will be foretold by the AD on his hand.
Yeah.
Now, here's a good question.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, he obviously does not have that AD on his hand when he is baptized and becomes Comstock, right?
Yeah.
So how does Comstock know Booker DeWitt has the AD?
Because Comstock, he has access to like one of the things is that Comstock, they say he's a prophet because he is a prophet. Because before he had Elizabeth, he had the Lutece, so he had that access to that technology to be able to see the parallel worlds and see into the future. And then eventually he has Elizabeth, and you see when you get to the Lady Comstock shit that he's able to the part of that siphon is that he's able to use that power. Like, as long as she's sort of, like, near the siphon stuff. And so, Comstock, the way I see it is that Comstock was able to look into a parallel universe where he saw, like, the Booker number 57 going through this shit, And so, like, at a certain point, he's able to try to intervene in some way, and he's seen, this dude's got the AD on his hand, so let's take care of this. Like, let's make up this whole, like, false prophet thing so that we can get all of Columbia on my side and against this Booker asshole.
Right. Okay. So anyway, moving on. Journey to Monument Island. This is mostly a gameplay section.
Yeah, but there are a few standout moments of just like a huge part of how Bioshock Infinite tells its story, and one of the most important asks like why this game needs to be a game and it can't just be a movie. Whereas like I think you could make the story into a movie, but it would lose so much of just like the world behind if you tried to do it.
And the basic thing for me in that so much of why the ending hits is that you are Booker, and you feel like you are because you have guided his choices throughout this game.
Yeah. But like there are a couple of like really interesting just little like world building beats. Like there's one where as you're going to Monument Island, you go this might not be the house you're thinking of, because the house I'm thinking of you go through and it's a house of people who are Lincoln sympathizers, because there's like this dichotomy where the Comstock demonizes Lincoln. We'll talk about like
Abraham Lincoln.
Not the movie Lincoln.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of they demonize the movie Lincoln because for some reason they just really don't like Daniel Day-Lewis's performance, even though it's amazing.
It was the voice.
Yeah, exactly. Like Lincoln should have a really deep, booming voice, and it's like even though that's not historically accurate, whatever. But yeah, no, they demonize Abraham Lincoln, or Comstock does, because, he's fucking racist, so of course he's going to. But there's a group of people in Colombia that are sort of sympathize with it, and you move through one of those areas where they are treating colored people in the back, and there are, printing presses with magazines and stuff, or not magazines, with newspapers of, anti-propaganda stuff. And if I was, just this cool little moment where you just, move through that area, you probably killed them, because you probably didn't even, wait to see.
No. It was after I had gotten Elizabeth that I realized you could kill innocent people. I did not think to try until later in the game.
I'm surprised that, I would assume that's the first thing you tried to do. Is
No.
The first thing you probably tried to do is just, as soon as you found an NPC in the world, just walked up to them and hit every single button, because you're there's got to be some way to kill these guys before I get a weapon, right?
No, I mean, the game held my attention long enough that I did not try killing anyone for, a good several hours.
Yeah, but I just really like that little moment where you're oh, hey, there are some good people in this world. Yeah. People that Jonathan probably killed in his playthrough. Maybe not those people specifically, but probably later on you kill some decent folk.
Yeah, I know. In Shantytown, I killed everyone. In Shantytown, I am
was sauntered into this just place where everyone's living in squalor. There are orphans everywhere. Everyone's starving. You're just I've got 2 guns and pounds of ammo and magical abilities. I'm just gonna kill everybody.
I did, and
fuck you guys.
And the thing is, Shantytown.
Oh, you want a potato? Here's a potato. You fucking.
Shantytown is an area you can get through stealthily, I believe.
Yeah, no. I think there's one fight that these 2 guys tried to mug you that I did not find a way not to fight them, but they tried to mug me. Fuck those guys! I blew their heads off. But
right, but no.
But everyone else, you can get through that place completely peacefully. You can even spawn in some food for some people so that they can eat it. You can spawn in food and then they go over to it and then you can steal their money if you want to, or you can just spawn in food for them.
Yeah, no. I killed everyone. Everybody you could kill in Shantytown was dead by the time I got out there, because not only did I start killing people, but then a firefight started with the cops, and I'm fuck it, I can't. It's too difficult to differentiate targets, so everyone, you're dead. Now, I did learn in Shantytown, though, that you cannot kill the children, because there's a little hovel where there's a mother her son is sleeping in her lap, and she's knitting, and I beat her to death. And then the son, you could not kill, so the son's going to wake up, and yeah.
God. And talk about ludonarrative distance. What the fuck was Elizabeth thinking through all that? She's I fucked up. It's Elizabeth was probably terrified throughout that entire game, and she's always trying to pass that point, trying to find a place to run away, but she just couldn't find it. She's just I gotta get away from this guy, but if he sees me leaving, he's just gonna fucking kill me. He's not even gonna kill me. He's gonna tie me up and torture me for weeks.
But now I like to think that because in my playthrough, in that one alternate universe, Shantytown, all the adults are dead while the kids are alive, it becomes like Lord of the Flies.
And then the entire Colombia just completely collapses because its entire workforce has just been brutally murdered.
Yeah. All right. Anyway,
what the fuck were we talking about?
Before
I got onto your bizarre homicidal tendencies.
The house with the Lincoln sympathizers who I did not kill. Let's be fair.
Because you didn't know you could. Let's be fair. But yeah, okay. So you move through there. That's a cool little moment, and then later, this is really fucking cool. In a really awful way, as you move to the Crow House with all the dudes with crows, and this is where the Lincoln stuff really goes front and center, because it's this huge mansion in this really dark place where these guys are the Order of the Raven or whatever, and you go in, and as soon as you open the door to the mansion, you're presented with this giant fucking statue of John Wilkes Booth, the dude who assassinated Lincoln,
holding a gun.
Yeah, holding a gun, and it's just oh God! Not only are these guys idolizing the Founding Fathers, which is creepy, but I could accept that. That's not, really fucking creepy. These dudes are, fucking worshipping the guy who assassinated Abraham Lincoln. That's fucking creepy. Especially being American, seeing that is so fucking unsettling. It's just oh my God.
It's really provocative, and I think this is the point when the game starts to get very provocative in its ideas.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of shit in that place where there's a painting of when Abraham Lincoln is assassinated, and it's John Wilkes Booth shooting him, but Lincoln's got devil horns and shit. It's oh, holy fucking shit.
The programmer who did that must have felt awful.
Or maybe he was like you and he just loved it. He's yeah, fuck Abraham Lincoln. Fuck everything, just kill everybody. But yeah.
It's the game's fault for letting me do it.
It's your fault for wanting to do it.
Okay, that's a good point. Anyway, let's move on. You get to Monument Island.
Yeah, you get to Monument Island. That's also really fucking unsettling, because that's like where you first see sort of like the technology at work behind the scenes that Lutece made. It's like huge fucking like really like Nikola Tesla type like giant, I don't know what to call them, like electrode shit, just like shooting electricity all over the place. And you figure out that this is like this entire island and like giant statue is, one, a prison for Elizabeth, but two, they're studying her. Like, they're keeping her in captivity so that they can observe her, and like there's like all these charts and stuff where it's like her, like the most significant jump in her power is when she first had her period, so I find that kind of interesting, and there's like all this shit, just really creepy shit, like they have, I don't know what the fuck they were doing, but it's like there's this room with like, the room is just covered in speakers, and they're just playing her singing, and it's like resonating with something in the middle. It's just like, there's some creepy fucking people working in this place. And it's like the deeper in you go, there's all these signs of like days left until the quarantine is lifted, and the further you go in, it's like more and more days are added on, so you know like fucked up shit is going on in here. And I just love like the deeper in you go, it's like the more fucked up it is, until you get to the part where Elizabeth is, and all you do is like you see her through like one-way glass where you can see her, but obviously she like thinks it's a mirror. And you can just, like, see her, and you realize this is, like, these people have been observing her, and there's, like, this little thing called, like, the Elizabeth tracker, with, like, all these different rooms with, like, a light lit up next to it, so when she moves to, like, another room, it's like, oh, she's in the library, but you see there's, like, bathroom and, like, bathhouse and shit on there. It's like, this is fucked up. Like, these people have just been observing, and, like, there's this really weird voyeuristic sense to it, especially because then you are put in that position where, for like a good 10 minutes, you're trying to like get to a part where you can actually get to Elizabeth, but all throughout that, you're like in that position of the scientist, just like watching her go about her daily life in a really fucking creepy way.
Yeah, it's a really interesting part, and I think this whole part, the sort of journey to Monument Island, and then the part in Monument Island, is a part that feels very much like the original Bioshock to me.
Yeah.
Where
it's very, like, overtly unsettling and very, like just, like, it's really dark and very oppressive.
And so there really isn't any narrative going on overtly. It's just you exploring and putting it together yourself.
Yeah, that's a huge part of this game. It's just, like, the huge, like, major story beats they do not spell out for you at all. And, like, a lot of them are you have to find the voxophones, like the audio logs in the world. And it's actually one of the interesting things with talking to people about the game and like going online and like engaging those discussions is that, you know, on your first playthrough, you're not going to find every voxophone. Like on multiple playthroughs, you're probably not going to find all of them. So like like major story beats being explained through that's really interesting because there's like, I probably know certain details of the story that you don't know, and you probably know certain details of the story that I don't know, but we don't know what we don't know. So like,
that's a great line.
Yeah,
I think that is also a central idea of Bioshock Infinite.
Yeah,
we don't know
what we don't know. Yeah, but
I could hear the Lutece saying that.
Yeah, but yeah, that's one of the interesting things. Is it's one of the examples of like their very subtle storytelling, and I found the audio logs much more engaging in Bioshock Infinite than I did in the original Bioshock, where there's like. This might not be true, like I haven't played Bioshock 1 in a long time, I don't remember the actual number of audio logs, but it felt like there were probably like twice the number of audio logs in the original Bioshock, and there's like 80 or so in Bioshock Infinite, but I like how they're all a lot more focused on what is actually fucking going on, whereas the original Bioshock, you'd pick up like half the fucking audio logs were like some like dude like, I hate having to clean the bathrooms, all I do is clean the bathrooms.
God,
like,
that's
a great fucking audio log, thanks for giving me that, like, I get it's like, it's world building, but at a certain point, focus it down a little bit. Like, it drove, like, because at a certain point with Bioshock 1, while a lot of the audio logs were really interesting, I just started spacing them out half the time, because it's like,
okay,
you're not saying anything, whereas in Bioshock Infinite, most of the time it was like, oh, this gives me some little hint about, like, why there are, like, these weird out-of-context songs playing in this game, or like, oh, this is, like, how the Luteces communicated with each other, this is really interesting, and, like, most of the audio logs had an aspect to that.
See, I'm so glad you pointed this out because I forgot Bioshock 1 had those audio logs I totally remember the one about the fucking guy with the, I hate cleaning the bathrooms. That annoyed the shit out of me because, and it was all subliminal, I guess, for me because when I started playing Bioshock Infinite, I did not want to pick those audio logs up. There was something I was just like, I don't trust them, I don't care, I don't want those things. And then I listened to a couple of them and I'm like, these are fascinating.
Yeah.
So I started doing it, but it was like, some part of me didn't want to do it, and it was because in Bioshock 1, they were not nearly as rewarding.
Yeah. And I like they play with those audio logs in a really interesting way when you go across universes, because like you in one of them, in like the universe where a Booker dies, you find some audio logs from that Booker.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. But yeah, actually, I'm thinking about like one of my favorite ones from the original Bioshock. Before we move on, was there's like a sequence near the beginning of the original Bioshock where you're just like you're just moving through Rapture and you go into like there's a bathroom and there's like this big fucking hole in the bathroom and like the reason the hole that is there in that bathroom so you can keep on going on in the level, but there's a fucking audio log in there of a dude justifying why the hole in the bathroom exists, and it's just like, I don't need that contextualized game. That's so fucking worthless to me. Like, I don't give a shit why there's this giant hole in the bathroom that I can move through into this other area. I don't fucking care. Don't throw all these junk audio logs at me. So, that was one point they fixed up. This is like, thank you for making all or not all of them, but like most of the audio logs very interesting and most of them very pertinent to the actual story and like the characters that I'm encountering in the world.
I also like the name for them in this game.
Yeah,
Voxophone.
Yeah, it's very like 1910.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, you rescue Elizabeth from Monument Island.
Monument Island blows the fuck up in a really spectacular scripted sequence.
Yeah. That bird tries to fuck you up.
Songbird.
Yes.
Yeah.
Songbird, who, this is another interesting thing. There was a great discussion by Adam Sessler and who else?
Jeff Gerstmann from Giant Bomb and like one of the editors from GameSpot. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. You can find it.
It's from Rev3 Games. It's only the first half of the discussion, and the second half is probably going to go up on Thursday. So I'm really looking forward to that because it's a fascinating discussion.
It's really good, and one of the points they raise is that Bioshock Infinite constantly puts in these game elements that you expect to pay off in a conventional way, and they don't, and Songbird is one of them. Did you have the same reaction I did when you saw Songbird? It's like, I'm going to fight that fucking thing.
I was like, oh god, this is going to be a boss fight. Because this is something, you didn't finish Bioshock 1, so I'm going to, tell this to you now. It's like, this is kind of a spoiler, but it's not like the important spoiler for Bioshock 1. Bioshock 1 ends with a boss fight that is one of the dumbest fucking boss fights I've ever encountered in a video game. One of the reasons why it's one of the dumbest is because that game is very smart up until 2/3 of the way through, where that game hits its climax about 2/3 of the way through, and then keeps going for 5 more hours, and then it's culminates in this really dumb, ham-fisted boss fight where it's the dude looks like the Atlas from the cover of Atlas Shrugged. It's that's really fucking subtle. It's the game about objectivism. Yeah. And it's just such a... He's this guy basically injects himself with all this atom and becomes basically Superman. It's fucking so dumb. And it's just a terrible boss fight. It has no place in that game. It's sort of this. It's the worst part about Bioshock 1 is its pacing. It's by far the biggest flaw that game has. Its combat is also really mediocre. But its pacing is fucked because you hit the most interesting point of the game and the game keeps on going for way too long. And that's one of the big things I fixed with Bioshock Infinite is that the ending to the Bioshock Infinite is fucking phenomenal. And it's the climax is at the perfect moment. And it's you're done. And it's okay, the game ends when the game needs to end, unlike the original Bioshock. And so I remembered that shitty fucking boss fight at the end of Bioshock 1. And I was like, oh god, no. Songbird's gonna be that for this, right? Because it's boss fights in first-person shooters are never good. I have played a lot of fucking first-person shooters. I've never played a good boss fight in a first-person shooter. Half-Life 1 ends with the Nihilanth, the big fucking floating fetus monster. Doesn't make any sense when you play the game. And terrible fucking boss fight. Halo 2 ends with Tartarus. You fight Tartarus, pretty fucking terrible boss fight, because all it is you're waiting for him to get shot by Johnson, and then you shoot him with bullets. Boss fights... Never good. Never good in a first-person shooter. Bioshock Infinite, they're yes, boss fights are never going to be good in a first-person shooter. They do have, the biggest thing I dislike about Bioshock Infinite is the Lady Comstock fights. I don't think those are particularly well done. I don't think they're as bad as the last fight from Bioshock 1, but having to fight the same, what is effectively a boss fight 3 times is pretty shitty. But, other than that, I'm so glad that they didn't end the game with you fighting Songbird, because that would have just been really fucking dumb.
You fight other people with Songbird.
Exactly.
It's great.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What the fuck were we talking about?
Monument Island blows the fuck up.
Yeah.
You and Elizabeth leave.
Yeah, you land on a beach, and and she's dancing around. And
really nice moment.
Yeah. It's again, one of the things I like about this game is it has a good sense of pacing where, there are long stretches of the game where there's just no combat, and I really like that. Because it just gives you a lot of time for the characters to decompress, to just, talk to each other, for you to, explore the world a little bit. That section when you, go in from the beach, there's like a little, like you go through like one area where there's the colored and Irish washroom. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about this fucking game, is that the game remembers, oh fuck, everyone is super racist to the Irish too. That is something that is like, as whitewashed as our history is, that is like one of the most whitewashed parts. Is just like, nobody fucking knows that. Like, nobody knows. It's like, yeah, no, the Irish were treated like fucking dogs. That is part of our history. So I was really glad that they fucking remembered that in that game.
Sean's Irish, by the way.
Yeah, like most of my family was Irish. Like my ancestors are Irish, so it's like having that just be ignored is like, come on, guys. Like,
you're lucky.
Really
you're lucky. You're Irish. You get to feel like, man, my people were oppressed. That sucks. I'm German. All I feel is guilt.
Yeah, only like I have to like. And this is one thing. I wish more British people felt guilty, because the British, like, okay, the Nazis
I'm half British too. I'm half British, half German. Because I feel fucking.
So yeah, you should fucking hate yourself like so much right now. It's like everybody remembers that the Nazis, the biggest assholes in human history. Yeah, but that was like one concise point of assholedom in German history. Like, there are other assholes in German history, but like the Nazis were like the crowning peak of it.
Germany's been fine since.
Yeah, other than since like maybe World War I, and even like after World War I, like maybe like since like the 60s, let's say. Other than like since the 60s, other since they invented Doctor Who, the British have been the worst fucking people on the planet. Like, all they have done is gone around the world and oppressed as many different cultures as they possibly could. The British, fucking horrible people. I don't know why we're talking about this.
To our British listeners.
Yeah, fuck you guys. Well, no, now they're fine. Like I said, ever since 1963, you guys are cool. It's like, you invented Doctor Who, fine with it.
We're not going to mark it by, like, the freeing of India?
Yeah, so, yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, British fucking assholes. Racist towards the Irish. This game recognizes everyone's fucking racist towards the Irish. So you go through the colored/Irish washroom, and it is literally a shithole. And then later you go and you have like the white people restrooms, and it's like it's all sparkly and nice and like super clean. And you're like, oh, yeah.
This game is disturbing.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's this nice part where you're down at the boardwalk again, and then is that when you try to get to Lady Comstock's airship?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
It's been 2 weeks since I played the game, so this part's a little bit...
I think I remember it. I'll say the next thing. For a while, there are not any big plot points, I will say, in Bioshock.
Yeah, there's like, before you start like jumping between worlds, there's like that section there. There's not a lot of big plot moments. It's a lot of little like character stuff between Booker and Elizabeth, particularly to set up Elizabeth for her like larger changes later in the story.
And I actually think this is a really good part of the game when you're getting to Lady Comstock's airship. Is there's a lot of good character interaction where you start to... This is, I think, the purest part where you feel like Booker's a nice guy, is you have an attachment to him here.
Yeah, and you're just, like, trying to get her to Paris, or at least that's what you think.
And it's really nice, and she's really becoming your friend, you're learning more about her, you're also fleshing out the world a little bit. Yeah. Oh, this is also when you fight Slate.
Oh, yeah, okay. I remember this part.
You have to go to
let's go back for a second, because there's another choice that I'm curious about what you made, where there is, when you're going through the, like turnstiles and stuff, trying to get to the airship, but then they stop you, and there's, like, you have this choice of, you either, like, try to, like, stall or something, or the other choice is, like, pull this gun on this dude.
Oh, I pulled the gun.
Yeah, okay, I stalled, and this is one of the interesting things where I never thought about this, that if you tried to pull the gun, it's obviously you're just going to massacre everybody you can in sight. But if you don't pull the gun, the dude stabs your hand on the table, and then later Elizabeth wraps it up for you in a bandage, and that bandage is on your hand for the entire game.
Really?
Yeah, so it's like, and then what I didn't realize that if you made the other choice, that never happens, because I was watching videos online, and I was like, that Booker doesn't have, because that hand is because it's her right hand, it is always visible on the screen with most of the guns. So it's like, that bandage is always there. So it's like, I like how, if you don't make the asshole choice, you get this really nice moment between Booker and Elizabeth where she wraps up your bandage for you, because that's also where your relationship is still pretty rocky. It's like, for you, you're just like, I'm just going to kill everybody. Elizabeth.
Obviously, I made the right choice. My hand doesn't get stabbed.
Yeah, but then you don't get this like nice bandage. You don't you don't get the sympathy points from Elizabeth. You made the wrong choice. Taking a knife to the hand is worth it.
Okay, I'm gonna go grab a knife right now. We'll see how this goes.
There's no Elizabeth around here. It's not worth it if Elizabeth isn't here. It's only worth it if Elizabeth sees you get stabbed in the hand.
Okay. All right. Anyway,
Yeah, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah. So this whole part, and so sort of the enemy of this part is Slate. And so when I talk about this being a good part for Booker, that's because this is where you really get to know his past and the Wounded Knee stuff. And I say, you feel like this is a part where you think he's a nice guy. And what I mean by that is that you find out he has a very dark past. He did horrible things at Wounded Knee, but his guilt is so extreme that you don't feel like that's who he still is.
Yeah. Well, like after Wounded Knee, or at least I assume it would be after Wounded Knee, he then became a Pinkerton agent. So.
Right. But again, we're so concentrated on who he is in the moment, and there's a revelation coming up that we'll talk about.
And there is definitely when you're at this point in the game, because you do identify with Booker so much, that it's like, you're inclined not to want to think that Booker is a bad guy. Like, because it's like, you are Booker. You're like, and Booker does show a lot of remorse for his actions, but he does keep on fucking slaughtering people. But you don't, think about it too much at this point in the game, because you're like, Booker, Booker's doing what he has to do, goddammit.
Yeah. So and then there's this Slate character, and this is a major sort of subplot in the game.
Yeah.
And Slate being mad at Comstock for taking his glory at Wounded Knee.
Yeah, because as far as Slate, this is one of the more interesting things about, thinking back to it after you've seen the ending, is because Slate doesn't think that Comstock was at Wounded Knee because Comstock wasn't, because he was Booker back then. And so, obviously, there's no record of Comstock having existed before he got baptized. So Slate's fucking really pissed off at Comstock because Comstock has all this stuff painting him as some sort of hero at Wounded Knee, and then eventually later on in this alternate universe, the Columbia settled the Boxers' rebellion presumably by just killing a bunch of Chinese people, and so Comstock paints himself as some sort of war hero, which then when you realize, Comstock is Booker, then you see, directly contrasted, this is how, after having been baptized, Comstock deals with this, is that he's just like, no, I did the right thing. Slaughtering all those unarmed Native Americans at Wounded Knee, that was I'm a fucking war hero, which is a lot of the way that the United States government treated it back then, and then Booker's like, I am the world's greatest asshole, I've slaughtered innocent people, and then I went and I beat and killed, laborers trying to get their rights, I'm a fucking cunt.
And it ties into the bigger theme of religion, and I think also religion in context of how the United States uses religion.
Yeah.
Which is that if you believe you are a man of God, if you truly believe you are the hand of the prophet, all these things.
Yeah, they use this zealotry to sort of shove off their guilt and be like, we didn't do anything wrong. Because this is what God said.
You can't, because God let you do it. So if you really believe that, you can't believe you're a bad person.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's kind of the game's critique of religion, I think, is more complex than that. I do want to have a talk about that later in a more holistic sense, but it's an interesting point here in the game. So you get through all the Slate stuff. I don't think there's a ton to talk about here.
Yeah, I really like the section where you're moving through, because you go into the Hall of Heroes, that museum, and then you move through these two exhibits, the Wounded Knee exhibit and the Boxers' Rebellion exhibit.
What's so fascinating is that those really do feel like you're in an amusement park.
Yeah,
but it's fucked up.
Yeah, it's really fucked up because it's you have in the Boxers' Rebellion, there's all these demon Chinese people being demons popping out at you, all these cardboard things it's meant to scare you and stuff. And yeah, it does feel very much this is could be an actual ride in a really fucked up world. But it also is just this really visually interesting element to it because you're also killing dudes throughout that area. And so it was this really interesting, it almost feels you've been transported to this fantastical realm because everything is, up to that point, everything is very straight lines, very clean, that's sort of the aesthetic of Columbia, and there's all these very jagged cardboard monsters and stuff
neon
popping
colors.
out at you. Yeah, it's very bright and shocking.
So I think
one of the more visually stunning sections of the game.
Yeah, and this whole part is you're trying to get Shock Jockey so you can activate the ferry to get up to Lady Comstock's airship, and then but at one point you're going to take Shock Jockey off of Slate's dead body. Turns out he's not dead. What did you do there?
I let him live because Elizabeth was there was my reasoning for the decision. I did not, at that point in the game, I was even though I knew there was not going to be any real consequences, I was invested enough where I was I don't want Elizabeth. This I would be Booker would kill this dude, but would not want Elizabeth to see him just kill an unarmed man right in front of her. And that presents an interesting plot thing later on in the game that I'll get to that you would not have experienced because you killed him, right?
No. That was my exact reasoning.
You didn't kill him? Oh, I didn't.
No. My exact reasoning was Elizabeth was there. She needs to get hardened, so I'm going to kill him in front of her because she needs to learn what this world is like.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. You killed him. Yes, right there.
I'm joking. I didn't even think about it. I blew his head off. If you fucking deserve
person.
He's suffering and old and dying. He will die a slow, painful death if I don't finish him off.
We'll talk about this decision back later on, because if you let him live, it comes back in a really interesting way later on.
Okay, good.
But yeah.
Anyway, so you get to Lady Comstock's airship, and this is the point where the game is the lowest for me. Is actually after once you get on the airship is. It crashes, I think the songbird comes or something, and it's the first time. This will happen like 3 more times in the game, but it crashes. No, it's not the songbird here. Duh. Sorry, I'm mixing this up. This part I like. It's what happens after. It's that this is the point we were talking about where you really do realize, oh wait, Booker's a bad guy. He puts in the coordinates for New York, and Elizabeth being a smart person.
Yeah, because she's been reading that. All she had to do was read books.
Yeah, she knows coordinates, she knows what he's doing, and it's not just this realization on Elizabeth's part, it's the realization on the player's part, where it's like, oh shit, I hadn't even given thought to what Booker's going to do with her once he takes her out of Columbia.
Booker's mission is to bring them the girl, and they will wipe away the debt, and that does not mean, hey Elizabeth, I'm going to take you to Paris. That means, hey Elizabeth, I'm going to hand you to these people back in New York.
And who are those people, do you think?
It's the Lutece.
Okay.
Because they're the ones who give him the mission.
Okay.
I don't know why they specifically want... I mean, I think it's just like Booker's mistake that he thinks like they want them to go to her to take her to New York. But yeah, like he thinks it's like, okay, I have to take her back. This is my mission. And at that point in the game, like that's what's still most important to Booker is just like, you know, I want to wipe. Like this is the reason I came here is to get rid of all this debt, and he's been really subtly manipulating Elizabeth throughout that entire section because it constantly is coming up. It's like we're going to go to Paris. I'm going to take you to Paris because he saw in that like voyeuristic section that she has like all these paintings of the Eiffel Tower and shit like that. So she's obviously, you know, as any like 20-year-old girl would be like really infatuated with the idea of going to Paris. And it's like, okay, there's this very easy way to get this girl to come with me, and he just exploits that without even thinking about it.
And so it's a really difficult part of the game there. It's challenging, I'm not talking in a gameplay sense, but just intellectually, because now it's like, you do have to reconcile things you had not thought of before.
Yeah.
And Booker has to reconcile these things too, because this adds to his guilt. But anyway, the airship ends up crashing because of this.
Because Elizabeth... Now it's like, I need to get the fuck away from this dude. She like smacks you in the face with a wrench.
Smartly so.
Yeah.
But anyway, now you're without Elizabeth for a little while, and this is the part where the game, until you start dealing with alternate universes, this is the slowest part of the game to me, and the part I like the least.
Isn't this where Daisy Fitzroy comes up and is like, hey, you need to get me some fucking guns, asshole?
What this part is it's just a giant series of fetch quests, where it's Daisy's like, all right, if you want this airship, you have to go get me the guns. And then you have to talk to Elizabeth, and Elizabeth's like, if I'm going to come with you, you need to do this, this, and this. And you do this, this, and this. It's like, if you're going to get the guns, you need to go into this place where what's the name of the guy? Finks. You have to go to Finkstown, and if you're going to go to Finkstown, you have to go blah, 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 blah. It's like, and now Chun-Li's dead, but then it's blah, 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 blah. It's like, it's really, it's like they're stretching, but then the alternate universes come into play with the scene where you find Chun-Li dead, and actually this part, why I don't hate this part, is because I think it becomes a meta-commentary on the nature of those parts of games, because suddenly it's like, now you kind of have to do the same thing, but across multiple universes. Yeah. And so, I don't know, there's just something about that once you get to the point where Chun-Li is dead, you are not expecting anything too interesting out of that, and suddenly the game goes batshit insane.
Yeah, and I actually kind of find it interesting that, like, that's how you felt about that part, because that part, like, I kind of felt that way, but I didn't really, because I was much more invested with the Booker and Elizabeth relationship there, so I wasn't thinking...
No, and that stuff's good. It's just, there's a certain point
but
where...
It's big, but for me, where I felt that a lot more strongly was when you're trying to get the shock jockey, where I was like... This feels kind of like this very contrived way to get me to go to this. And it is also something, again, one of the flaws of the original Bioshock is I can't even, like, probably 5 or 6 times. There's, like, the gameplay in the original Bioshock is basically you go into a new section, something really contrived happens that prevents you from going to the other section right away, and you have to go find 3 to 5 things to clear whatever that obstacle is, and then move to the next area. And that's sort of like the structure of Bioshock, and that's sort of like... When it does that for, like, the 4th time, you're like, okay, goddammit, like, stop shuttling me to a new wide-open area that then is like basically just like 4 different levels in there because it's like 4 linear paths going out to go get to different things and then come back to the middle and fight a boss and then go through. And that's how Bioshock 1 was. And that's kind of what Bioshock Infinite felt like to me when you're going to get the shock jockeys. Like, this is kind of this contrived way of like, okay, I need to go find this shock jockey to then jumpstart this tram thing to then get up to the Zeppelin. But it's really just an excuse to go find Cornelius Slate and deal with that stuff.
No, and I agree. I think
it's been done a little more elegantly. And I like they do it again with guns. But I think like I remember that part not being that long, just because it was like you're kind of just like because there's not a whole lot of combat until you go get to the where Chun-Li is. Yeah. You called him Chun-Li earlier, which I thought was very funny because
Chun-Li, that's Street Fighter.
Yeah,
I saw that DVD on sale at the grocery store the other day for like $1.
The Chun-Li movie?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I thought that was funny.
Forgot that Chun-Li movie existed.
It's not even that old, but you can buy it for $1 at your local grocery store.
Not that you would want to.
Yeah, not worth it. You buy food.
You could go buy Street Fighter 2 for like $1 probably, so.
In any case, Chun-Li. So anyway, I mean, what do we want to cover from that part I just breezed through, though? Anything with Fink? And this is where we start to get with his guilt over being a Pinkerton, because now we're getting into these ideas.
Yeah, because now this is like, because what Fink does is he's a laborer. He's the one who provides all the labor that helps Columbia like be as sparkly and cool looking as it is up top, because it's like you're kind of going down and you see it's like, okay, they effectively enslaved black people and Irish people here to just be their workforce, and then even below that, that's where the shantytown is, where like all the people there who can't find the work, just like, we're fucked, we have to go down here, and then it's like when Fink, like, when someone dies working on the machines upstairs, Fink will just pull someone out and, like, have them work up there. So it's like, that's where you see, like, there are no labor rights here. And that was sort of like what the Pinkertons was like trying to get back to this way of working factories. It's like, if you guys want to hold strikes, we're just going to beat the shit out of you.
And I agree this part of the game is completely necessary from a narrative and world building standpoint.
Most of the areas like where the plot is not moving forward, it is necessary in like other sense of like if we're having the characters be developed, to have a little bit of the world be developed before you can move on. But it's like it could have been like, this is a super minor complaint, but it could have been done a little more elegantly, I guess.
Yeah, and it's minor for me. It's just this part. It's not that long. I still had fun with it. It was just that the gameplay here got bogged down to me in that it felt like it was too much at the behest of plot contrivances, but these are necessary to immerse you in this part of the story that is essential to you having a holistic understanding of Columbia and of the thematic sort of tapestry of the game. But you find Chun-Li, that motherfucker is dead, and that is one of the most graphic depictions of a dead person I've seen in a game.
Yeah, it's like he looks like he just literally was plopped into a chair in the police station, just beaten to death.
Yeah,
like beaten to death.
Yes,
as brutal as like that phrase sounds.
Yes, and then the Lutesses come up.
Yeah, and, although we've because isn't that to get to where Chun-Li is? Don't you move through Shantytown? Am I remembering that correctly?
I think that's later.
Sure, because you might be right. I'm trying because again, it's been like 2 weeks since I played the game, so I'm trying to remember the exact order.
I'm pretty sure that's later.
Okay, where is it? If it's later?
Because once you start going into the parallel dimensions, you still have a ton of stuff in Finktown.
Yeah,
you really do, because you have to go down to the police station to get his gun parts.
Oh yeah, the police station is where you get the gun parts, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
because you go, I'm pretty sure you go through the shantytown to get to the police station.
That is it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway. But this scene is obviously the turning point for Bioshock Infinite, because this is where it goes from really good story about this one world into what the fuck am I playing?
Yeah, because up to this point, you knew that Elizabeth had this ability to open up these rifts.
Yeah.
And that's like, and they were rifts to other times and other worlds, but her ability was really limited, and it was sort of like, in a gameplay sense, I thought it was interesting where it's, she can pull in like medical kits or like a turret, but you can only have like one thing pulled in at a time, and it made some like larger combat arenas pretty interesting. But like in terms of like the story, they didn't do a whole lot with it. It was just sort of like the sense of like there are rifts opening up all over the place, and it's like Elizabeth has some control of that. But then here is where you open up a rift to a world where Chun-Li is still alive, or at least his body is not there in the fucking chair. And so Elizabeth is like, well, I can open up this rift completely and transport us into this world, but like we might not have a way to come back. And so you're like, well, I want to keep playing the game, so open it up, baby.
And what's so interesting about this on retrospect is you don't ever go back.
Yeah.
You never.
Well, I think because this is not like explained in the game, and this is sort of like one of my more harebrained theories about like the plot of the game. But my understanding of how that worked, because this is also, once you do that and you're walking back through those areas, you see people who you've killed like are alive in this universe, obviously, but they have these memories now of having been killed like just like 5 minutes ago in the other universe, and so they're kind of going in crazy. There's this like theme of you get a bloody nose whenever you're having memories that are like from another world because you've been compressed. And so my understanding of like how that works is that when you move to that other universe, you're not moving to that other universe, you're collapsing the universe you're in on top of that one because their powers are not perfect yet, and that's why people's memories are getting combined.
And that's actually what I thought too, because they're very minor.
So you didn't move into the other universe, you destroyed the universe you came from and combined it with a different parallel universe.
Yeah,
so you just committed ultimate genocide on everything in that universe.
Yes.
So
Elizabeth
Elizabeth is the worst monster ever in the history of all of eternity because she literally just destroyed a universe. But,
Elizabeth, she didn't know better.
Yeah, no, exactly. But
right.
But I do think it's interesting how they don't bother to try to directly explain that much. But to me, that's the only way that makes sense of why those other people would have any of those memories. Like it would make sense for like Booker or Elizabeth to like be taking on memories or something to be combined with their version existing for like dead people. It's like that doesn't mesh with how I would understand that. So, collapsing universes.
Now, what I do like the scene though, where the Lutece come in and start to explain these things. Of what is the line they have there when you first do the world collapsing?
I don't remember.
Okay, it's just an interesting conversation. They have to prompt you towards doing this.
Yeah.
It's where they're saying there's like, from this perspective, I see heads.
They're dealing with the coin because it's literally like Schrodinger's cat of like he's dead, he's alive, he's in like these other universes.
Right.
Sick. Yeah. For their perspective, they see all of everything at the same time.
Yeah.
So like, I always like that where like to me it makes like this is a very common trope in science fiction of having these like semi-omnipotent characters who just like all they do is leave cryptic hints. And you're like at some point you're just like, why? Well, you just tell me it. And I like for the Lutece, you almost get this sense it's like they can't say it any other way because trying to communicate to someone who experiences only one reality in like along a linear time path would just like almost be completely fucking impossible to have like the most like odd cryptic ways of like trying to get you to understand some sort of concept. I like that.
Anyway, I like that part. And so then you're going to open another tear later. You kind of go through. You have to go find Chen-Li's guns. You find out that while Chen-Li is alive in this universe, he's been kind of fucked up because
and the because like someone from like the universe is still alive who had died before, and so he kept Chen-Li. You got me to do it. He kept Chen-Li from being thrown in prison, but instead, like, his gun parts got confiscated, so now you have to go find his gun parts.
Yeah.
It's like, it's very fetch questy of like, okay, now I did this,
that to me is the silliest fetch quest in the game, where it almost felt like a parody, where it's, now you need to go find his gun parts. It's like, what the, you came up with that?
Yeah.
Anyway, but
it's like when you get into this, like, well, I need you to go bring me 5 sheepskins. It's like, oh, fucking God, what the fuck you... This is turning into an MMO?
Yeah.
What the fuck is this?
But anyway, you go get the gun parts, but you realize you can't move the fucking things.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that no one thought of that before going to look for the gun parts. But anyway...
I think it's like my bigger complaint of, like, nobody's thinking about this is, you're in a different fucking universe. Does Daisy still need the gun parts? Did you ever stop to ask that question? Is like at this point, is getting the gun parts going to do a goddamn thing for you? Because
I actually was thinking that too during this part, and I forgot about it now because obviously it does pay off. But then you get to the next much bigger universe shift is you change so where the gun parts aren't there anymore, and suddenly Columbia is kind of an apocalyptic hellscape.
Yeah.
Because the Vox Populi rose up with the assistance of one Mr. Booker DeWitt.
Yeah, because in this universe, I think Elizabeth got taken away to Comstock Manor instead of being in the tower or something like that. Like, you've learned something through, like, one of the voxophones that, like, Booker...
I did not learn that. Okay.
Yeah, Booker could not get to Elizabeth. I don't remember if that's specifically the reason, but Elizabeth is still alive in this universe, so, like, one of the reasons, like, he becomes, like, joins the Vox Populi is to try to find some way to get to the Elizabeth from this universe, because he can't get to her at Monument Island. So it's like, and so... He's still, one of the interesting things is that he dies in that process and becomes a martyr for the Vox Populi, but Booker was being Booker, was just using them. Like, he was still just trying to achieve his purpose. He wasn't, like, he didn't become this, like, saint in this other world or anything.
Right.
But Daisy Fitzroy uses his death and, like, his having been, like, he obviously was such an effective soldier, being sort of, like, mythologized among the Vox Populi, and, like, twist that into this narrative of, like, he's this martyr now, and, like, uses that to motivate people to rise up in the revolution.
And it becomes it's very much echoing the Comstock stuff from earlier, where you're realizing the Vox Populi, once they have power, they're not any better than Comstock. Really.
Yeah, it's sort of like, revolutions tend not to be these very nice, wholesome, like, yay thing, especially when it's within, like, the American Revolution is a nice example of where it wasn't as bad as it could have been because we were fighting dudes who were, like, across the fucking pond. It's like, if you're, like, the French Revolution is one of the most, like, disturbing events in human history with, like, once the, the revolutionaries took over, it's called the Reign of Terror for a fucking reason.
Did you hear that they went back and animated the last 2 episodes of the Reign of Terror special that were lost?
I haven't seen those yet.
We should watch that.
Yeah, it's a good, even without those animated, it's a very good serial.
Okay, nobody listening knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
All right,
but yeah, I like this section where, it's very easy a lot of times to just be like, the oppressed, the underdogs are victorious, and they're the good guys. I always just kind of like, this is very sort of like noir thing of like, there's no good guys in this story. Like, the closest thing, maybe Elizabeth. And, like, for most of the time, she's a good person, but arguably, she becomes a worse person throughout the course of the story because, like, she starts out very innocent and sheltered, and then she realizes how shitty shit is.
It's a common theme in a lot of stories, they don't even have to be noir, of innocence cannot survive in a world that is bad. It will either die or it will be corrupted. And that's kind of a theme of Bioshock Infinite here.
Yeah.
So anyway, now you are fighting not just all of Comstock's men, but the Vox Populi.
Yeah, because there's this great moment where Daisy, you're like talking to Daisy on the phone, and you're in like an elevator, and that's where she says, "It's just like my Booker DeWitt died. You can't be here. You're an imposter or something." It's like whatever's going on, you're making the narrative too complicated, and I like that. It's just like you're messing up my story that is causing all this shit to happen. So I'm going to get everybody to kill you. It's like,
and eventually you. And talking about Elizabeth losing her innocence.
Yeah, this is her biggest character moment.
She has to stab Daisy Fitzroy in the back with a pair of scissors.
Yeah, because Daisy kills Fink, and then you have like this big combat section, and then Daisy sort of like behind this glass has like this kid up at gunpoint, and Elizabeth is like, I can get through this hole to get to her, but like I'm the only one who's going to fit. It's just like stall her, and you're like, well, okay, I don't really want to see you kill somebody, but this is like kind of our only option right now. So she goes through and murders Daisy.
And I'm not joking here. This is just an issue that I had to think of in this part. Do you think that kid's death ultimately matters if it were to happen because A, you have a bunch of alternate universes, B, this world is a piece of shit, and C, it's all going to be probably collapsing on itself anyway.
No, but it matters to Elizabeth. Like in the scope of things, nothing matters. Like, I'm a fucking nihilist. Like, don't talk to me about shit that matters.
Yeah.
Because my answer is going to be no. Especially within the context of once you discover this is parallel universes, there are no consequences because that kid's going to be alive and dead in a million different universes. But to Elizabeth finds a huge amount of value in protecting that innocent life, and so she sacrifices her innocence for it. And that's where she has this character turn where after that, she cuts off her ponytail, she puts on that like really revealing dress, and it's a really interesting character moment for her because it's like I think like it's like being with Booker in a way corrupted her, but also made her much more capable, where she's taking things very seriously, she's very proactive in the story, but it's almost kind of like I kind of wish she wasn't anymore because I liked when she was so happy all the time, and like, there was that side to her, and that being with Booker made her so acclimated and used to violence that she like would be able to kill someone. Like that Elizabeth would not have been able to do that when you met her. It's only by being with Booker throughout that story where she's now able to do what she has to do in the way that Booker does.
Right, and if you like Elizabeth, this next part of the game is going to get sad.
Yeah,
because what happens next?
Let's see, because after that, this is where the section you go to Lady Comstock?
Yeah.
Yeah, so then after this, you get out, you need to go, because now Elizabeth is like, I need to kill Comstock. Like, this is like her mission now. And this is where also there's character turn for Booker, where Booker decides he's not going to just leave her behind, that like, we're not going to New York. We're also not going to Paris. Like, you've decided to go kill Comstock, and now Elizabeth dictates the plot of the game because Booker's like, I'm going to stick with you because, this is where Booker's like, he's kind of becoming an okay guy now.
Yeah.
Like, he's doing what he needs to do in a not a I have to just kill everybody sense.
Right.
If I need to protect this girl.
So anyway, this is the part where you basically have to get to Comstock Manor to kill Comstock, and to do that, you're going to need to go find Elizabeth's mother's hand.
Yeah, because there's like a fingerprint lock or whatever on the door, and so you have to go. So you have to go to her grave, and this is where the weirdest part of the game, I just see the narrative justification for it because it's another area where it sort of has to decompress. But Comstock brings Lady a sort of like other Lady Comstock into this universe, but it's like sort of, my understanding of this is kind of flawed, but I think it's kind of imperfect, and it's also mixed with Elizabeth's like really troubled emotions about her mother because Elizabeth was locked up in a fucking tower for her entire life. She's got some parent issues.
Yeah.
But so you have this like ghostly form of Lady Comstock that is like this like manifestation of Elizabeth's rage towards her mother that you have to fight, and she's also bringing like these ghostly like forms of these like dead soldiers back to life. I don't think they're actually like back to life. I think they're like half like people, like half like in this universe and half not, is my understanding of it, because they're not ghosts. But yeah, it's kind of the weakest part of the game here to me, is that boss fight's not a lot of fun because because all those enemies infinitely respawn, and so that's never okay. I almost never am okay with infinite respawning enemies, but particularly not in that situation.
I actually like this part, and I totally get where you're coming from, because, the infinitely respawn enemies are a problem to me. But I thought the firefights were pretty fun. They were very intense. This is the part of the game where I feel like the difficulty is at a level where you're always feeling stressed out, and I like that. I think it feels right for this point in the game. But then also I just like the atmosphere of this part where things are very dark, everything's kind of dead and decaying, and you have to go find these 3 tears that will reveal a truth about Comstock, and I think it's really interesting the mythology that you get, not just for those 3 tears, but what you're getting along the way.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, where it's like, this section is totally needed in terms of the narrative. Like, it's not moving the plot forward like in like a very straight sense, but is filling out some really important details and allowing you to sort of decompress after Elizabeth fucking killed Daisy. And this is like where when I played this game for the first time and I got to that first ghost fight, this is where I got really frustrated with the game. Like, the only time I ever got really frustrated with the game. I played the game on hard, and when I got to that fight, I was just like going through it. I didn't realize at first that that those enemies were going to respawn infinitely. I kind of suspected it, but I was like, well, I'm going to try it out, because my strategy for any situation like this where there's a boss that has a bunch of minions is kill the minions first, so then you can just focus on the boss.
Yeah, it doesn't work in this fight.
Yeah. So I just kept on trying to kill the minions. I was like, I'm pretty sure that they are infinitely respawning. But over the course of that, I died multiple times. And the way dying works in this game, very similar to Bioshock 1, where it's not like, in order to like, not just like kick you out of the game when you die, which I kind of appreciate. Instead, it's like, when Elizabeth's with you, she will like revive you off to the side. It'll give you like a clip for both of your guns back, I think, or like maybe just a clip for like the gun you have equipped back, so you get a little bit of ammo. But all the enemies get a certain percentage of their health back. And so, on hard, I unfortunately got into this loop where eventually, this is where I finished my first playthrough of the game, because I just got frustrated and it was like really late, so I also wasn't playing at my best. But eventually I got through this loop where it became literally impossible for me to beat that scenario unless I reloaded a checkpoint, because after you died the first few times, I had used up a significant amount of my ammo, and there's only a limited amount of ammo in the area. Like, Elizabeth will give you some, but not enough. And since it like deals with how much health the enemy gets back in percentages, and Lady Comstock has a massive fucking amount of health, like every time I die, she would get more health back than I could possibly deal to her with the amount of ammo I had available. And the only way I could get more ammo is by dying. So I was like, well, I'm caught in this like infinite loop, so I'm just going to turn the game off and get back to this tomorrow. But it was like, it heightened, it like revealed to me that it's like, that was not a very well designed encounter, because, they obviously did not take into account the way that their death system worked when they designed that encounter, because having infinitely respawning enemies makes it so that you can't beat that encounter without reloading a checkpoint, and no encounter should be that, because that completely defeats the point of having the death system be like that in the first place.
Right.
So that's my most major complaint with the game was because then also you have to do that fight 2 more times, and that's pretty fucking lame. Like, having to repeat boss fights isn't to me very good game design.
Yeah, it's not the best part of the game from a gameplay standpoint. I wouldn't argue that.
Yeah.
I should note that this is actually, when I finished the game, my final, my final play session was from when you get to that gate and you find out you're going to have to go find Lady Comstock to the end. So I played a big chunk here, and I think that's part of why this whole part from there to the end is my favorite part of Bioshock Infinite, because this is when I was just most invested in the game, and from this point on, it's just amazing. And the next big thing that happens after you get into Comstock Manor this is when the game just gets out of control crazy, is basically you finding, not you finding, but Elizabeth winds up getting kidnapped, and shit goes wrong because she gets...
Oh, God, yeah. And it's also just one of, when she gets kidnapped by Songbird, it's just one of, the most fucking, the saddest things is, she's trying to protect you and saying, Songbird, take me, and then Songbird grabs her, and then, there's this shot where she's, turned around, reaching out to you, and you sort of, reach up to her, but you can't grab her, and then you just see, mascara, streaks down her eyes because she was crying. It's, just that image is just burned in my mind because it's so vivid. And
then suddenly some terror bullshit happens, and you are in the future, and basically in Comstock Manor now she is like Comstock. She is the prophet.
Yeah, she pulls you into her future where this is the future that happens every single time Booker fails. And he fails every single time because he can't stop Songbird. And it's sort of the way she talks about that, it almost sounds like it's a kind of a constant, unless someone's directly manipulating with the timeline, is that every single time Songbird stops Booker. Booker just can't get past it.
Right, and this is a really, really tough part of the game. It's just visceral, and it's just so sad because you feel just on your last legs.
Yeah.
I kind of described, not necessarily the part where you're just getting to finding future Elizabeth. That part is really sad and heart-wrenching because of the audio logs. These are actually my favorite audio logs. Are hearing Elizabeth. Courtney Draper is fantastic in this section, illustrating as she just loses hope and dies, and you're getting this sense of what Comstock does to her is just to use time to just drain all hope out of her, and it's just really heart-wrenching. But then you meet, future Elizabeth, and New York is getting firebombed.
Yeah, it's 1984, it shows that on one of the posters. I like that.
It's just a nice little detail, yeah. If you're going to pick a year for that to happen, that seems like the right one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, this happens, but she gives you basically a little note for past Elizabeth that will help to break this cycle.
Yeah.
You go back into the past, and now that you have this second chance to save Elizabeth, this is where I feel I was most invested in the gameplay, in just that it's I have to save her. This is all I have left is saving Elizabeth. And I have a chance, but if I miss it, I know what will happen, and she will have to live that again. Another version of Elizabeth will have to live through all of that.
Yeah.
And it's so sad. And it's like this effect I describe sometimes as the Die Hard effect, where at the end of Die Hard, John McClane is just beaten and bloody and on his total last legs, but he's able to save the day. That's kind of how you feel when you're playing that section. It's just I'm barely holding it together. I have almost no ammo. My health is fucked. Now I'm fighting these fucking, robot things in this house, or maybe that was an earlier part. But anyway, it's just that, and because this is the part where there's just you have to go around and fight the Iron Patriots and disconnect the electricity.
Mechanized Patriots. Iron Patriot is a Marvel Comics thing.
Okay,
I make that mistake all the fucking time.
Okay,
I have to stop myself. No,
that's not Iron Patriot. Okay.
So that's copyrighted.
Yes, Iron Patriot in Iron Man 3 this summer from Marvel Studios. Anyway, but Mechanized Patriots but great part of the game, and when you finally do find Elizabeth and reconnect with her, it's a great moment.
Yeah, although I kind of want to go back and not just skip over all that stuff.
I don't either. I'm just keeping it over.
Okay, because you just went through all of that. But for me, when Elizabeth is one of the most interesting parts of the game, because Elizabeth gets kidnapped, and then Booker gets up and he's like, Elizabeth, Elizabeth! And you jump out, make one of the most ridiculous, skyhook leaps. It's you drop, 3 stories and land on the rail. It's your arm would have been ripped out of its fucking socket, dude.
Right.
Skyhook does not make any sense, but it's totally fine. But it's you go down there, and you're, running across this bridge to get Comstock Manor, and, Booker keeps on yelling, Elizabeth, Elizabeth, I'm coming for you. And then you get to the manor, and you're you open the door, and you see this statue to Elizabeth, and you're oh, fuck. Something has gone wrong here. And I love how... it's pretty obvious that you've been transported to this some other alternate future. But while you're going through it, while you go deeper and deeper into that manor, you're sort of following along because there's some tears open that you can hear the past through, and you're following along that timeline slowly of Elizabeth being tortured, her then being brainwashed, and then her Comstock dying from old age and her replacing him, and then just her losing all hope, saying it's deciding we're going to just ravage the earth below us. It's there's always throughout the game, they always refer to the ground as the Sodom below.
Yeah.
And then now she's saying it's we were given this Eden and we turned it into a Sodom. And so it's Booker not coming for her and not rescuing her made her over time just completely lose hope. It's she just kind of she doesn't go crazy, she just gives into despair. And so then she's just it's sort of the Dark Knight, some people just want to watch the world burn. She reaches that point, not because she's insane, just because she has nothing left, and she's just I want everything to end, and she's going to destroy everything. And I find that's such a emotional part of the game, because you're all of a sudden thrust into this alternate future, because when you go into that, through that tear, it's while you're going through the bridge and it gets really foggy and smoky and you can't see anything, so you don't know you've been transported to a tear. So you're immediately become this sort of fish out of water. You don't understand the situation, and slowly piecing it together, realizing it's and not necessarily knowing that you're going to be able to go back, because I didn't know, because that feels you're getting to the end of the game in that section. So it's so you're thinking am I not going to be able to go back? Do I have to kill Elizabeth? What is going to happen here? And so it's so then when you do encounter older Elizabeth and you're able to give them this chance to fix things, it makes it all the more dramatic, because you're I can't let this fucking happen, because you spend a good hour in that future just seeing all the consequences of you failing.
Yeah.
You're I can't fucking fail this time, because this shit's fucked up.
Yep. All right. So you save Elizabeth, and now it's time for the final confrontation. You have to run, and you have to take an airship to Comstock's airship. That's actually a pretty fun part.
Yeah, I really like that part.
Although that's the only time I encountered a major glitch in the game.
Yeah, what was it?
Okay, yeah, during that part you can jump onto other ships and kill people and come back. Well, one time I did that, killed everyone, tried to come back, and it was too far away. And then that ship, what happens to the ships is they turn and they get sucked into this black hole kind of thing. And I fell off the ship, but I was just floating there. And I wasn't getting sucked in, I wasn't getting killed, and I kind of was able to turn. I was able to turn and fully control myself, but I didn't have access to my weapons, because they just kind of disappeared. And I'm able to look out at Columbia, but it's getting further and further away, turn around, and I'm seeing this storm, which eventually just becomes black because they didn't animate it that far. But I wouldn't die. I couldn't die, and I had to restart the checkpoint, which was really far back, and sucked, but it was it was really odd, because it just, if you fell off there, it wouldn't, clearly they did not intend for the player to be in that area.
Yeah, it's whatever happened, you somehow, it seems probably what happened is, for whatever reason, because nothing, when you are on those ships, they're not supposed to move past a certain point, so they're always able to get back, and for whatever reason, that scripting broke, and it was no, everybody's dead on this ship, you're on that ship, even though you're not, and so we're just going to carry you out to the area where no player is supposed to be, so it's all the rules for player movement and stuff is broken.
Yeah, so it was really odd. Yeah. But it took me about 2 or 3 minutes of sitting there realizing,
I'm fucked.
Yeah. All right. So anyway,
but luckily I did not encounter any noticeable glitches in my playthrough.
But then you're on Comstock's airship, and I think this part is ridiculously fun.
Yeah, because what's really fun about the combat is it has a really nice player progression to it, where you're getting more powerful, you're getting more abilities, and you're upgrading shit throughout the course of the game. And since this is the last stretch, and you're I've got all the stuff I'm really good at fully upgraded. It's I've figured out how to use my shit. I know what the fuck I'm doing, and this is just now you can just put all of it to use, and you're I'm going to fuck shit up, because you also have all that emotional build-up from having seen this is the future you assholes are making, so you're I'm going to fucking kill everybody.
Yep.
I'm just going to completely cut loose.
And they have sky rails
on your asses.
They have sky rails everywhere.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, you go Superman on their asses, and eventually you get up to Comstock, and you have a really intense confrontation with him.
Another one of the moments where it's after I beat the game, I immediately thought back to this, and this moment makes a lot more sense, where he's you have this conversation with Comstock, Elizabeth is trying to talk to him, and then he's dropping all this stuff about Booker knows what's going on. Like, Booker knows what's going on. Like, ask him about your finger. Ask him about your finger. And she's like, what's going on, Booker? What's going on? And you, like, have this, like, prompt of, like, trying to interrupt, like, Comstock's, like, going crazy. Like, ask him about your finger, and you can interrupt Comstock. It's, like, the only thing you can do. And when you do that, you don't just interrupt Comstock. You then take his head, smash it onto this basin multiple times, and then drown him in it.
Yes.
Which is, like, it's this really extremely over-the-top, like, violent action, and all while he's doing it, Booker's yelling at him, was like, how could you do this? How could you lock your daughter in this tower? How could you do these things? And then after you beat the game, you realize Booker's Comstock. It's like, it makes a lot more sense because he also has, like, a nosebleed at that moment that, like, Booker's just killing himself. Like, that's like, that is Booker's,
out of guilt.
Yeah, that is Booker's self-loathing and hatred about, like, himself and his own actions, and obviously the actions of Comstock, just, like, coming out, and it's like, and it's like a very intentional, like, they made that really violent and really over the top, and, like, you don't expect Booker to do that at all. Like, you know Booker's probably going to, like, you know, punch him or something at some point, but you don't think as soon as you hit that button prompt, you're just going to beat the fucking shit out of him and drown him while he's alive.
Well, you're also expecting, I think, at this point in the game, that Comstock might still be a boss or something.
Yeah, you're definitely still, like, expecting, it's like, okay, I'm going to have to, Comstock's going to, like, drink a super vigor and become fucking, like, super, like, George Washington or something.
Right. He'll become an Iron Patriot.
Yeah, it's like, I'll walk through there, and he's getting into a fucking mech suit or something. It's like, oh, God. Oh, shit.
But no, again, this is a game that is very much playing with the conventions and just throwing them by the wayside a lot. So, you kill yourself, kind of, and then you get to basically the final gameplay portion, which is where you have to defend. Songbird becomes your friend.
Yeah, because you decode the message. It's Cage. It's CAGE, which is like, you could have just fucking put, like, you know, a musical measure and just, like, CAGE. You didn't have to make it cryptic.
Right.
Old coot.
Anyway, but she's an old coot. Why
like she. Yeah.
But anyway, you have to fight just ridiculous number of enemies to keep the ship alive while you're getting to Monument Island to destroy the siphon. And I will admit, I did not love this part gameplay-wise. I thought as a difficulty spike, it frustrated the hell out of me.
Like, a lot of people have been saying that, and it's funny for me because I don't feel that. I love this section of the game, but I beat it on my first attempt.
Oh my God.
And when I beat it, it had these small, like, because you have to, this is the only part, like, I totally recognize this, like, they should not have designed this kind of that way, but, like, my experience with it was a really good experience with it, because throughout the entire game, you don't have a fail state. Like, there's no way you can just, you know, Elizabeth can't get killed and is like, you have to reload a checkpoint. You don't die. You don't have to reload a checkpoint when you die because you just get revived. This is the only point in the entire game where it's like, if they destroy this big thing, then you lose and you have to restart this checkpoint. It's like, that's really dumb. For me, like, I didn't even know, like, I actually thought for a second, it's like, maybe you only win when that thing runs out, because when I won, it had so little health, I thought it ran out all its health, and then it's like, the encounter was over, I was like, oh, is this some sort of weird thing where it's like, I just try to hold out for as long as I can, but then when you can't hold out anymore, then, like, the next thing is triggered?
No,
it was really funny, and then when I was looking online, it was like, oh no, like, a lot of people hated this part because they died a lot. It's like, oh, I had a really good experience with it.
I died over and fucking over and over and over, like 5 or 6 times, because there's just so many fucking enemies. I had so little ammo. It's tough to find ammo in this part. And it's just, there's so many mechanized patriots and other enemies coming at you. And Songbird can only attack like every minute. And even then, it's like, there's always a Sophie's choice between, like, God, I have to either destroy this part or this part, but either way I'm going to lose because there's shit firing at it. And it annoyed the hell out of me. I had to change the game to easy. I'll just admit. I changed the difficulty down because it was like 2 in the morning when I was at this point, and I needed to finish it.
Yeah.
So I was going to return. I had rented the game, and I was going to return it the next morning. So I'm like, I just want to finish it. But yeah, and then I was able to do it in one try on easy. But
yeah. So. Like, again, I totally recognize that encounter should be designed a different way, but I had the absolute best way to experience that encounter, so I'm totally happy.
Yeah, and actually,
because for me, it was like, this was fucking awesome, because it's like, I was, you know, I did die a lot, but I didn't die so much that it was like, it was making it really frustrating for me. It was like, every time I died, I was like, I need to get back into the fight. It was like, I thought it was like really intense and really fun.
And I mean, I fail-stated it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And what I was, I actually think that it's, from a design standpoint, it's okay. what I would say, and if they had just fixed this one little thing, I would have been able to beat it on medium, I think, and I would have had more fun with it, is when you fail state, you go all the way back to where you first, where you have to make Songbird your friend, and so it's just a super long way back, and every time I was getting close to winning when I would fail state, and if they just had some checkpoints in there along the way, like you beat one wave of Zeppelins, and then you get a checkpoint, that would be fine, because then you could focus on every individual sort of segment, because the battle does have segments, and instead it's like you have to know this whole thing and where every enemy is going to come from, and you have to kind of memorize it at a certain point.
For me, the most frustrating part was there's at a certain point, I think you can stop this by blowing up one of the ships, but I just never had Songbird ready for when I could see which ship it was. But it's one ship keeps on dropping off 2 mechanized Patriots at the end of the bow, and I was I could never, I never blew up that ship by the end of the encounter. I blew up the other Zeppelins to, get it to finish, but it was there were always 2 fucking mechanized Patriots coming at me. It's at a certain point, I was part of it was good, because that meant I was constantly, I used the crank gun almost throughout that entire encounter, because there's, just constantly mechanized Patriots, I just keep on picking up ammo for this fucking thing. It was, at a certain point, I was can you just fucking stop it for one goddamn second? Just stop dropping off mechanized Patriots. Let me just kill some normal dudes for once.
Yeah. But anyway, you beat all that.
Yeah.
You blow the fucking shit out of Monument Island.
Yeah.
And then,
again, it's already partially destroyed, and you're I hate that fucking island. I'm going to seriously destroy it this time. Fuck that place.
Yeah, you fuck it up. And then you've got to do something about Songbird.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth, in her infinite wisdom and power now...
Yeah, now that you've blown up the siphon, she, fully realizes her powers, and I love this moment because Booker's no, Elizabeth, the thing is broken. I can't control Songbird anymore. We have to do something about Songbird. Songbird, and she just looks at you and says, no, he isn't. She snaps her fingers. It's bam!
Rapture!
Yeah, fucking rapture.
Great.
This is the part for the game where, you always hear the expression, your jaw drops, and I was that sounds like a total exaggeration. If my jaw could physically hit the ground, it would have physically hit the ground. That moment blew my fucking mind.
It is
where all of a sudden you're in rapture. Because
great cut.
Because there's no better way to so perfectly visualize the concept of the multiple worlds than having you all of a sudden you're in the fucking place from the last game that is not from this universe. It's very clear Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite take place in different universes, but they take place in the same multiverse, motherfucker, so all of a sudden it's holy fucking shit, I'm in rapture. And it's also, you're doing that, but it's also, for me, the way that scene happened is, she snaps her fingers, and it's all of a sudden, you're underwater, but I was so invested in, his Songbirds drowning, because that's why she does it, that's why she takes you there, his Songbirds drowning, and you can see him on the other side of this glass, and Elizabeth has this moment with Songbird, because Songbird's not evil. Songbird was just trying to protect Elizabeth throughout the entire thing. Songbird's almost like a child.
Yeah.
Because it has, human parts to it, but it's lost all of its, real free will. And so, Elizabeth is sort of soothing it as it drowns and dies, and then you see Songbird, fall back and die, and then, I hear in the background, I forget actually the name of the song, was, Somewhere Beyond the Sea, that song, which is, that plays all the time in Rapture. It's, one of the licensed songs they got. I was hearing that, and I was oh, fuck.
It's same for me.
Yeah, and I turn around and it's holy fucking shit. Holy fucking shit. I'm in Rapture. Not only that, I'm fucking almost damn positive that room in Rapture is the room where you pick up your first plasmid, because it's there's the stairs there where you go up, and there's the Gatherer's Garden machine that has that dispenses plasmids and gene tonics, and I'm pretty sure that's where you get the electroshock in the first Bioshock. It's holy fucking shit, dude. This is fucking crazy.
Yep. And suddenly, this is the point in the game where you're going to start to realize that Bioshock Infinite is not just some quippy title.
It's infinite. It's infinite worlds.
Yep. And so, as the song that plays during this section says, the circle is unbroken, we come back to the beginning of our discussion, which is the last 30 minutes of the game.
Yeah. And I like when you're in Rapture, you get into the bathysphere, and it goes down, and Booker has this great line where you're looking at the city and the city under the sea. Ridiculous.
Yep.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah. Of all the things you could say ridiculous about.
Ridiculous.
Yep. It's good. Troy Baker delivers that well. But yeah, and then you're going to you go up to the lighthouses again, And
it's fucking crazy because you go back to the lighthouse from the original Bioshock, and it's like, and that was where I was realizing, when I noticed that this game started the same way that the original Bioshock did, I was like, oh fuck, that lighthouse was, the fact that it started with a lighthouse, so much more significant than I thought. I thought it was just a cool throwback. Nope, not just a cool throwback. The lighthouse is totally a fucking thing.
Yep, and these next 30 minutes, as good a video game ending as I've ever seen.
Yeah. And it is fucking crazy that this ending lands and fucking nails the landing because it has no gameplay. It is the world's most fascinating exposition dump. Is what the ending is. It's that sounds like an insult, but it's not. I fucking love the way this game ends.
Yeah, and you still get to move around and
It's not like the game takes control away from you, but you have no meaningful interaction with the game. You're just moving, listening to Elizabeth.
Yeah, it is the Bioshock equivalent of a cutscene.
Yeah, yeah,
and it's great. It's just so great because, and I think part of it is because that last part is so tough, and I think this is where the toughness of it pays off. You're ready to just sit back and let things wash over you. And you've also been through so much, and you've been through so much with Elizabeth, and you fully, again, convention-wise, you expect this is the part where Elizabeth's arc will culminate, and that she's already been center stage for a while. You'll figure out what is she going to become, but it's not about her.
Yeah.
It's about you, and she's become omniscient, and so she understands what she needs to tell you.
Yeah, and I was go through this process of showing you, before the revelation becomes that you are Comstock, they go through the process of showing you how does that come about. They take their time trying to get you to understand the concept of the multiple worlds. How they you go back to that conversation from the beginning of the game where you're on the boat, but in the first time you play it through, Booker is saying things to the Lutece, and you don't know who the Lutece are at this point, but they're not responding to what you're saying at all. They're having this conversation and having half of the conversation, and then now you're having that other side of the conversation with them in this universe, in this reality. It's that was a really cool little it helps you give this tangible sense of this is how these multiple realities work within the fiction of this game.
Yeah, and I just think this chunk of the game, I don't know if it's exactly 30 minutes, but I think that's about what it was.
Yeah, I think of it as a 30-minute chunk.
Yeah, and that 30-minute chunk, I just think it is so, every fucking second is so perfectly tuned, so perfectly cut, if you can say this is edited in a certain sense, which it is, just the way every revelation comes about. I just think maximum emotional impact, it just uses every second perfectly just to get you into this place where you are at the end of that game going to be just bowled over, flattened. Where those credits are fucking long, but you sit through them because
you're glad that they're long because it's just I need some time to fucking think about this ending.
Yeah, and so first you find out you sold your own daughter, and you're and I actually thought you sell your own daughter and you're chasing after her, no, give me back my daughter, and she goes through and it cuts off her finger. And I think it cuts to black for a fraction of a second before coming back in. I was wondering if the game was going to end there, because that could be an ending. Yeah. It would be leave some stuff up in the air, but it's that's a big revelation. That could be for most games that would be big enough to end a game on. Mm-hmm. We're not even close.
Yeah.
And then we've got to do the whole baptism scene where you realize just how much guilt Booker DeWitt carries with him. And I think
and it's so interesting to see that scene where you go through the process of you accept the baptism, but then right before you get actually baptized, Booker's no, I can't get through with this. And it's really interesting that, and when you're running up to save Anna/Elizabeth, it's really interesting because it's you get the sense that you are your Booker, but when he's transported into these parallel universes, he's that Booker for a brief moment, and he goes through those actions without thinking about it, and then he's then he sort of comes back for a second.
Yeah, and I think actually that baptism scene, which really hit me with the first time I saw it played the only time I've played that part, I think this is as good a time as any to talk kind of about the role of religion in the game. Because I think that is sort of as clear an example I've seen in fiction of explaining basically what the allure and the danger of religion is in our world.
Yeah, it's this very, it's because it's very concerned, at least my reading of the game is, I look at the game as a deconstruction of guilt and self-loathing, because that's what that baptism is. And religion, particularly Catholicism and Christian religions, is very concerned with this idea of guilt and original sin and stuff like that. Where I where that's the point of the baptism, is to get rid of this original sin, to get rid of this guilt. That's the point of the confessionals and stuff like that. And it is definitely there's a sense where the Bioshock Infinite is definitely making this argument where if you've done something that horrible, the only way you can ever make amends for it is not trying to shove it aside like that. Like, you have to own your sins, is basically what Bioshock Infinite's saying. It's like, and the action of that baptism, of this, like, ritual cleansing, is that it's a ritual cleansing. And that if you're just taking that and that's it, and you think that absolves you of your sins, you're wrong. And I think even, like, I'm not trying to say that this is, like, what all religions believe, because I think any, like, sane religion doesn't just say, you just don't go to the confessional, you just take a baptism, you just, like, convert, and then you're okay now. It's that you can do that, and with the beliefs of that religion, you've taken the first step, but you still need to redeem yourself. It's like, you're just not magically absolved of your sins, and that is, like, Comstock tries to take this easy way out and just be like to try to not have to accept his sins. He has to come up with excuses for it's like, God thinks it's okay. God let me do it. It's like they are inferior people, so it was like okay that I killed the Native Americans, and it's like, and that is the wrong way to do it. Instead, you need to accept your guilt, accept your sins. And even though that does not make you a good person, like, that does not make Booker a good person. Like, Booker's still a fucking cunt throughout almost the entire game. Like, you can't, like, just accepting your sins is not enough. But it's like, you have to do that. You have to be able to own them. And they will probably destroy you, but you have a chance of becoming a good person.
Yeah, there is no way to erase a bad action. That is a major theme of Bioshock Infinite, including across all the Infinite worlds. You can't just erase the things you've done wrong.
Yeah.
And I think, the religion aspect of this game is a socio-political one. It is not, as you just said, it's not saying that all religions do this, but it is saying that the crux of how religion is used in a socio-political way, this is the way it's used. It is a way for countries like America to say, we are perfect, and we are exceptional, because we have God on our side. And it's a lie. It's bullshit. That's not something that these people actually believe, and when they do believe it, they're deluding themselves, because that's the only way they can live with what they've done. Yeah. And it's a way you attract people to believe what you believe and get them on your side, is to promise them that for no effort they can erase their own guilt and these sorts of things. And I think it's a pretty exceptional scene. And
I definitely agree, and definitely, it really hits home. And I know we both have our own personal experiences with religion that makes it more meaningful to us, but it definitely is. I'm very fascinated with that idea of how do people reconcile the parts of themselves that are not good, because there's no such thing as a good person as far as I believe. Everybody has bad parts to themselves, and trying to reconcile that and own that in some way without letting that destroy you, I think is a really important part of trying to be human, because you have this. As nonsensical as it may be sometimes, all humans have this conception of right and wrong, good and evil. It's and we're the only animals that really have that, awareness to make that distinction. And so it's how do you reconcile that with those parts of yourselves?
Yeah, and I just think it's phenomenal, and I think the production of that scene where it's playing Will the Circle Be Unbroken, and it's a beautiful song. Yeah. And that moment sounds beautiful. There's nothing about that to me that sounds haunting. I think you completely see the allure of this for him. And that, they do have the song, the recording session played during the credits, and I think it's more than just they're showing you a fun video. I think that song is a major thematic element of the game.
It is. It definitely is. Because that is... I mean, you probably didn't notice because it's you wouldn't be looking for it, but when you go into the city for the first time and in that place, they're playing a choral version of that song. They're singing that. And then there's also, I don't know if you might not have even seen this moment because you killed everybody in Shantytown, but in Shantytown you can go into this bar where, when I went to the bar, this is a point where I almost ended up killing everybody in Shantytown, because when I went into the bar, I was just looking around, because it's one of those moments where Elizabeth is hey, we can either keep on going on the main plot, or we can look around, there's a bar over there. I was I want to go see the bar. So I went behind, behind the bar, and this bartender, pulls a shotgun on me. I'm whoa, and, backed out, and was okay, don't go behind the bar, I get it, it's probably not cool, you guys probably don't want, Whitey down here with this fucking machine gun and pistol, just walking in here. And then I noticed there's a basement, and I went down into the basement, and in the basement there was this table with a lantern and a chair, and leaning up against the chair was a guitar, which actually looks a lot like the acoustic guitar I have up here. And so I went down there, and Elizabeth says a line oh, hey, there's a guitar there, I wish I knew how to play it. And I was I probably can interact with that. So I walked up to the guitar. There's like, press X to use guitar, and Booker picks up the guitar, and there's this really beautiful moment where Booker just starts like slowly playing this like chord progression, like sort of strumming along, and then you realize that the chord progression to Will the Circle Be Unbroken, because it's probably been stuck in Booker's head for like the entire time, because he heard it when he came into the fucking place, and then Elizabeth starts singing along with it, and then so it's like this really, I think that's what they're trying to record in the credits, is that, because that's Troy Baker playing the guitar, Courtney Draper singing, and like she picks up like an apple and gives it to this orphan. It's like this really beautiful moment that, like, you know, a lot of people aren't going to see just because, like, it is tucked away in this little corner. There are tons of little moments like that. Like, there's tons of stuff I have not seen in the game that I've heard people talk about. I want to go back and try to experience. But it's like, that was actually one of the moments where I really kind of fell in love with the game, because it was like this little beautiful little, you know, right before you go back into the shit, Booker is able to, like, sort of, like, decompress for a little bit. He's, like, able to calm down, play a little guitar, and have this little moment with Elizabeth. And it's like, you put the guitar away, and you're like, well, I guess we've got to go do this now.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I like that Will the Circle Be Unbroken pops up again.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
So, and I think what's that song becomes this kind of beacon of melancholy in the game, because it's singing about something that they are unable to attain. And I think it's, that's one reading.
Yeah, it is definitely like, because, you know, you can very literally look at that as like, they have, you know, been going through this cycle of, like, the Lutetia bringing Booker, trying to, like, get Elizabeth back. He fails because of Songbird or whatever happens, and, like, going through that again and again and again and again. It's just like, they want to try to, like, the entire game is trying to break that cycle, and you figure that out by the end of it. And so, yeah, that's, like, it's very literally pertinent to the game.
Yeah, so, really good. And in the last scene, you find out you are Zachary Comstock.
Yes.
And
it's Booker DeWitt. He's Zachary Comstock.
And I love that. Yeah. And I love that they do it all in just kind of this one moment, and then the game ends where they push him in, he drowns, you zoom out.
It's the only time for the entire game it breaks point of view with Booker.
Yeah.
Like the last 5 seconds.
Yeah. And you've got the musical beats as every Elizabeth disappears, and before you see the last one disappear, we cut to black, game's over.
Yeah, and like the last note plays as it cuts to black.
And it all happens so fast that you are just kind of like, just stunned, like paralyzed.
Yeah, and I like when it cuts to credits, it doesn't just cut to credits, it cuts to the Bioshock Infinite, like the title card again.
Yeah.
And then it goes into the credits where it's like, Bioshock Infinite. It's like, you fucking played this. It's like, sit through the credits, because like this is, like we were saying, like this is definitely a game where it almost feels like the credits are a part of the experience, because, like, one, they put that video up of Ken Levine, like, talking through Troy Baker and Courtney Draper trying to play that song, which is a really awesome video.
Yeah.
To sort of, like, get you to motivate you to sit through the credits, but it's also, like that story ends on such a, literally, an abrupt note that you need the credits to, like, be able to think about what happens, because there's no more story because Booker's dead.
Yeah.
It's like, there's nothing else, there's no way to present the story anymore, so it's like they drop that big bomb on you, and they're like, now think about it. And you're like, so it's like that experience is like, you then, like, walk backwards through the game, like, you know, like I said, like picking up moments like when he kills Comstock, when he encounters Slate, that, like, takes on huge amounts of significance now that you know, oh shit, we were the same person.
It's the kind of thing,
diverged from that one choice.
It's the kind of thing where if there were no credits, I still would have just been sitting there. I would have muted the TV and just been like, oh god, what do I do now? And like the shit of it was, I played this sucker. I finished it at like 1:32 in the morning. I was going to go to sleep. That was tough.
Yeah, no, I finished at about 3 in the morning. So
yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was just sitting there, it's like, I kind of want to go to bed, but I'm not going to be able to.
Yeah, that was fucking it's just transcendent moment of gaming.
There's this really awesome tweet I saw from Brad Shoemaker, who's one of the writers for GiantBomb.com, where he after he finished the game, he just like had a tweet where it's like, I wish there was like words to describe this picture, because I just finished Bioshock Infinite. This is how I feel, or whatever, effectively. And it was like a picture of a panel from Calvin Hobbes. I forget what comic it's from, but it's like Calvin's on his bed and just like bloodshot, because it's like something like someone said something that like completely blew his mind. It's like, that's like, yes, this is that game where it's like, this is that game where it's like, after you finish it, you're like, fuck, I'm not going to be able to sleep because I'm going to be thinking about this so much.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So, I guess we have to talk some theories here, different interpretations.
Okay, sure, because then there's also, after the
credits, right.
there's a small little post-credits thing where You're in Booker's office, which sort of like reoccurs throughout the course of the story. It's like all black and white and shit, and like Booker's like you hear like a lullaby or something, like musical notes coming from this room that was the room that the baby was in, and then it's like you hear him say like Anna, and you open the door, and then like cuts to black right before you see if like there's anything in the carriage.
So it's indicating there could be a possibility that he could be happy with his daughter now. But we'll see.
But there's also a possibility that you did fail. That it's that the reality of the multiple universes is such that you aren't really able to, like, I think they use the phrase, like, pull it up from the roots. Like, that's why they tried to drown Comstock, is because to try to, like, to cut off all of those potential universes is that they sort of, like, collapse that choice into, like, one, like, singularity in time. That's, like, why all those Elizabeths are there, is because they're talking to all the other fucking Bookers that are there, too. And it's like they drown that Booker that becomes Comstock, and so the Booker that doesn't ultimately go through the baptism lives. But it's like, but you don't know if like the reality of the multiple universe situation means that like that's how that actually works. Like you don't know. It's like there could be any number of different ways that he then becomes Comstock or something like that.
And I'll tell you what my interpretation of it is when I saw it initially. And I've thought about different versions of this, but this is still actually what I see in this game, is that because in that moment he has the bloody nose and everything. I think in that moment he is sort of and he has the. He's experiencing the Booker of that moment too.
Yeah.
To me, I think he's in that moment. He is all Bookers. Destroying him destroys Booker at that source, and I think, and all the Elizabeths. So in my reading of the game is fairly cynical in that he is destroyed. All the Elizabeths are gone, and that at that point, from that point on, for the totality of time and space, Booker DeWitt is gone, and they've just wiped that out, and that wipes out Elizabeth. So everyone.
Then how does that reconcile the post-credits scene? That doesn't make any sense.
The post-credit scene doesn't need to. I didn't actually like the post. I actually don't like that was there. I don't.
Yeah, because it doesn't go with your incorrect interpretation of
but I thought it was unnecessary because I thought the game ended perfectly, and to have anything else was.
I know. I like the post because I think your interpretation is just wrong with how I think totally within the context of what's going on. I think what does happen is that I think ultimately I feel the game is trying to say that Booker succeeds. Like that's how I feel about that they are able to pull it up from the roots. That he does embody all the Bookers of that moment, but of that moment of you go through with the drowning basically. So it's like all of those Bookers that would become Comstock get killed. So then what was originally this however the different timelines that culminate in this decision where they all have this decision of either you go through the baptism or you don't. All the ones that did go through the baptism then become Comstock, and that branches off in any number of different ways. But that choice never gets fully realized, and all that is left is this choice of I did not go through the baptism. I think that's what the game is trying to say, but a part of me also wants this to go with the more fatalistic of that it doesn't matter. That this the 123rd time you've gone through this cycle is not the last time because what's interesting about the end of the game is that you don't see the Lutessa anywhere for that whole last 3 hours or so. The Lutessa are just not present, and so the Lutessa are the only people who have been actually experiencing the cycle, and so there's the sense of you don't know how those other cycles ended. They might have ended this exact same way, and this did fucking nothing. Because all the Lutessa are trying to do is to have Booker be able to live with his daughter, because they feel guilty about taking his daughter away from him. It's just there's almost a sense of if they did succeed, the Lutessa would probably pop up in some way. And since they don't, part of me does want to say that there's this fatalistic of no, what actually happens is that in credit scene is that is Booker waking up after he's given his daughter away, and he's forgotten it because he was fucking drunk, and he opens the door and Anna's not there, and then eventually the Lutessas show up. Bring us the girl, wipe away the debt, and then you start the game over again, and that is 124. That is those are my. I don't know which one I ultimately feel is more true, but those are the two interpretations I feel about the ending.
And I think that's possible. I guess I don't know if I explained myself fully with what I was saying before.
What it sounded like for you is that because they got through their messing with the alternate universes and stuff, that Booker and Elizabeth kind of got detached from the space and time the same way that Lutessa did. That when Booker died in that moment, Booker never exists, and that Elizabeth never exists.
Elizabeth definitely never exists, but Booker has to live up to that point, or else that point doesn't come about. But I think Booker / Comstock doesn't exist, and what I see in that moment is this is very much the theme in that moment to me is one about sort of choice, because this is all these multiple universes come about in many ways just because of the choices different people make.
Yeah.
And for Booker, that's just a very basic, do I go through with this baptism or do I not, which is representational of a lot of other things. And to me, thematically, what I see in that moment is that he is able to destroy Comstock and himself at the source of their separate, their divergent births, because he is able to accept that I am Comstock, I am both, and that identity becomes one, and they become one person again in a sort of metaphysical sense. And that choice, he decides not to make it because he basically knows what would come out of it, and basically his guilt drowns him, and Elizabeth can never come out of that, and nothing else can come out of that. I think that's one. I don't know if that's the reading I favored. That's what I got out of it when I played it, and I think everything you said is definitely possible. I think there are many ways to go about it, and I like that this, as I say with most ambiguous endings, the point to me is not necessarily concretely what happened, but that it ends on that note it ends on, because that is a point of emotional fulfillment.
Yeah, and it is definitely like one where everybody sort of gets a different something out of it, like either like whether if you want a happy ending and it's like that is what you were looking for, that does exist textually within the story. Like you can totally very easily look at it as, and part of me, and that's one of the reasons why like I feel like the game is almost asking for that, is it's like everything has been so fucked up till that point that you just so desperately want, it's like Booker, just let him have his fucking daughter, because you've seen that his daughter is the one thing that can help, like, make him be a good person. So you desperately want that to happen. But I think it is smart that the game doesn't just like say it's like that's what happens, because because also it is like everything is so fucked throughout the game that you're also like this mentality of like realistically everything is still fucked. Like realistically everything's going to still be fucked. Like you're not going to be able to fix it because we've never been able to fix anything.
And I guess one way you could read the ending, the post-credits stinger, in what I was saying about it, is I think that could be a Booker waking up the next morning when... I know he dies, never mind.
Yeah.
So there could be no more
Booker. I think
it's
like if with your interpretation... it's just like maybe like not without having the religious element of it, like not like heaven, but that is Booker waking up in the afterlife.
Yeah,
like I could see that.
That's actually, and I think that's probably what I thought of it, because the color scheme is also different in that.
Well, yeah, I mean because that room's always black and white, like because it's taking place in the past. I think that's why it's black and white. But
anyway, but I think there's lots of different ways to tackle it. I guess that's where I went with it. But like I said, I could see where you're going with it too. It's a mind fuck.
Yeah, no, it's a hell of a fucking ending, and it's really bold and fucking... I'm just so happy that they were able to end this game and end it so amazingly in a way that did not in any way involve a boss fight. Like, having the story come first and foremost at the ending of the game, and that like working and being totally fine, such a breath of fresh air, because I felt like for a very long time now, as our ability to tell stories in video games has developed, we've still been like attached to this idea of like the boss fight, and you need to have the boss fight, and it's like all the gameplay stuff has to be first and foremost, and ultimately culminate in like the final moment of the game is like all focused on the gameplay sort of thing. It's like I'm glad that's like that doesn't have to be that way. Like you can have this very natural ending to the story that does not involve you like shooting the dude from the cover of Atlas Shrugged. You know?
I mean, just comparing it to Halo 4 last year, which was a first-person shooter we loved, that was one where the story, the ending to Halo 4 is the best part of Halo 4 story-wise. It's beautiful writing and directing in those scenes, but the gameplay side of that ending is fucking broken. Because
it's like this really dumb QuickTime event that's just like, it's tried, like the last boss fight, or like the last like fight part of Halo 4 is trying to bridge that gap, that like, not going, like, focusing only on, like, just having it be in a cutscene and not having it just be, you have a proper boss fight with the didact that is a game that set that up, that, like, I almost kind of wish, even though first-person shooter boss fights suck, Halo 4 was setting that boss fight up with didact so much, and Halo is a franchise that would have a boss fight. That's how Halo 2 ended. It's like, it wasn't absolutely awful in Halo 2. It's like... I almost would have preferred having a boss fight than having this, like, really limp in between, like, you get a cutscene, like... QuickTime bullshit.
It was weird. But anyway, so that's Bioshock Infinite. We are running short on time, and we have to get to Doctor Who. So
there's still so much to say, though.
I know. So let's talk quickly about the gameplay side of things.
Okay. Before we do I want to like make a few more notes on the story. Just like little moments.
That's fine.
Note of that I had.
That's fine.
Of like I said, brought up the acoustic guitar thing.
This is going to be a long one, folks.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, but so one other thing that I was thinking about the ending of like one moment that I really fucking love again of them sort of like contextualizing like video gamey bullshit of like the lighthouses and stuff is that you have the thing where you go into the room where Anna is and you have to hand her to the brother Lutece, and I love that like Elizabeth has this line of dialogue where it's like he's like, I'm not going to do it, and Elizabeth says like, well, you're not going to leave this room until you do. And it's like, just, that's like almost breaking the fourth wall, like just very like to the fucking player. It's like, this is the nature of the choice in this game, that this game has this very deterministic, like fatalistic, Slaughterhouse 5-ish. These choices are made, they will be made, they always will be made. This is like one of the constants, like you always choose this. It doesn't matter what you know, because you always do this no matter what. Yeah. It's like, you are not leaving this room until you do. It's like, yeah, because you're not going to be able to progress in the game because the scripting is such that it's like if you do not activate this prompt, you don't get to continue with the game.
And that's like, one of the most painful X button presses ever.
Yeah, you're like, well, sorry, baby Anna. Here you go. You go to this creepy dude. And there's one other thing of one, like, my favorite things, like, just like atmosphere and mood and like really clever world building elements to Bioshock Infinite is the reoccurrence of these anachronistic songs that keep on playing, where it's like it starts with God Only Knows, which is a Beach Boys song that like there's an a cappella version at the beginning, which like I knew that was a Beach Boys song, but when I heard that, I thought that was just like the Beach Boys had just done a cover of like a really old song, like how The Circle is Unbroken is like just a Bible hymn. So it's like I thought it was something like that, so I didn't think much of it. But then there's like one of the other moments that really blew my mind about the game is that later on, about halfway through, when you go to the world where Booker dies and it's like the Vox Populi are rising up. And like right when you're going through Shantytown and you hear this black girl singing this song that's like sounds like this old like black like folk song kind of thing, and it's like I thought I recognized the song, and I was like, I know that fucking song. And I walked past her singing it, and I was like, I stopped for a second, and I'm like, I know that fucking song. And I turned around and went back and like was listening to her, and she was singing "Fortunate Son" by Creedence Clearwater. I was like. And then, like, I hadn't thought about, like, the anachronistic songs up to that point, and I realized I had heard, like, 2 hours ago through a fucking a rift that song being played, but the actual version of that song, and there's this fun little dialogue where Elizabeth says, like, I've never heard music like that before, and Booker's like, I don't think anyone's heard music like that before.
I remember that part.
Yeah. It's like, it's playing Fortunate Son, and I hadn't, like, totally, like, recognized that, and I was like, holy fucking shit. It just, like, suddenly, like, blew it open, and I was like, this is the reality these people live in, is that, like, someone, and you later, like, they expand on this because you find voxophones that, like, from the dude that, like, took the songs as, like, Fink's brother or whatever and, like, actually made that a business. It's like, this world took these popular songs playing through these rifts in space and time and just, like, adopted that, and some dude made money off of it, and it was like, and that's, like, and it's creeped through this culture, and it's like, just having that, so, like, having me be able to realize that just by, hearing the song playing in the world, fucking amazing moment. And it's like one of my favorite moments in the whole game. And it's just one of those things where it's like that I only really recognize that because I really like that song and I really like Creedence Clearwater. And it's like if I didn't like like how I'm not a huge Beach Boys fan, I would never have noticed it. It's like so a lot of people are not going to have that moment, but they're going to have a different moment somewhere in the game. And that's like one of the things that makes it so special about it being a game to me.
Yeah. No, I think this is as clear an embrace of the video game format as a narrative powerhouse as I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. So anything else to say?
No, I think that was my last little moment I had with the game that I wanted to bring up because I really liked it.
All right. Let's talk about the gameplay really briefly. I think what I want to touch on here is I don't think we need to go through all the guns or the vigors.
Yeah. This isn't Halo. It's like this is not the most important part of the game.
Although the shotgun in this game is so much fun.
Yeah, it is.
I kept feeling like the T-800 at the end of Terminator 2.
Yeah, because it's only for action shotgun. Yeah.
So, and it's what would always happen is you would shoot someone, they would like come back like the T-1000 did, they would like be blown back, but before they could attack again, you shoot them again, they fall over, and you feel exhausted.
Yeah.
It's awesome. But that's great. Let's say really quick, favorite gun, favorite vigor,
okay.
Sean?
Yeah, I mean, before that, I want to just how I like the theory of the gameplay in this game, because it's something that this is the most heavily criticized aspect of the game, because it is, it's the worst part of the game, and sort of if you're taking parts of it out, and whole systems, is the combat. But that's just because the story is so fucking good, and it's I think the combat definitely holds up, and I think it's a ton of fun. But but I think it's just a taste thing where there are a lot of people who really didn't like the combat for some reason, because I've seen a lot of criticism of it online. But one thing I love about the combat is that it forces the player to like really specialize into like a specific play style. Because as I've seen people talk about the game, I've noticed everybody who brings up like their own gameplay, like what they're doing and like how they play the game, is that everybody had a completely different way of playing the game. And that's because you can only hold 2 weapons as a Halo system, whereas the original Bioshock had like a PC shooter like weapon wheel, which was really clumsy and pointless because every game that lets you use every weapon, like carry every weapon with you as you encounter it, you only ever end up using like the shotgun and the machine gun anyway, so it's like, what's the fucking point? Just give me the 2 weapons, and then if there's an RPG lying on the ground, I'll use it, I'll pick it up, spend it, then pick my machine gun back up, that's like, maybe it's because like my first real first-person shooter that I loved was Halo, but that's how I feel like I much prefer the 2-weapon system, and I like that this game has it. But so you have 2 weapons that I felt like it's like you picked and like specialized in, and you had 2 vigors, because if you're playing it on a console, you can quick swap between 2 vigors that like you picked and specialized in. So for my weapons, I almost like near the end of the game, I pretty much exclusively used the carbine and the shotgun if they were available to me, because I had fully upgraded them and they were very effective from medium range and then short range for the shotgun. Then my vigors were I used shock jockey, which I fully upgraded because I could stun people, and I had charge, which was fully upgraded, and that was my favorite one because when you fully upgrade charge, it's like it's 2 abilities. One, because charge is basically you just like hold down the button and you charge at a dude and like smack into him and does some damage. If you hold it for long enough, it'll like basically do an instant kill on normal enemies. One of the extra abilities is when you do like the instant kill one, it like creates this big shockwave on impact that throws other people back. And the other one is when you do a charge, you get like 3 seconds of invulnerability afterwards. Which the only like reasonable way to get that is like near the end of the game where I got it. So it's like the game is so hard at that point that you actually kind of like need that extra little like cheesy little like invulnerability to like get in there, blow that dude away with the shotgun, and then like get the fuck out of combat and like go back in and stuff. And that by the time I got to the end of that game, I felt like I was so effective at using that playstyle, and I had honed that playstyle so much that it was just so much fun because it's like I have mastered this way of playing this game while I'm at the end of it. So it's like it felt very personal to me, and so I felt like this is my way of playing this game. Most people like have played it a different way, and I think that's really fucking cool.
I basically used the same system you did.
It is very unfortunate that we both use the same one, because I've seen a lot of people say they've used like Crow Trap a lot, and with the combination of the Devil's Kiss apparently is very effective.
Okay, well here's what I was going to say. I did use shotgun and carbine almost exclusively. In fact, I think there were a couple guns I never used, which is too bad. But I liked the carbine so much, and I liked the machine gun so much. Fucking goddamn it, shotgun so much. And
machine gun.
Yeah, and then with the vigors, I guess I would say charge and shock jockey were my 2 most used. I know that, but I did not have a 2 set that I used all the time. I also used undertow a lot. I really liked that.
I used undertow a little bit, but then like once I'd upgraded shock jockey and charge, I was like, I'm just going to use these. Cause
okay, undertow is helpful on areas where you're on like
push people off.
Yeah, it's really helpful on the airship missions.
Yeah, but for me, since I had upgraded charge basically did that because it created the shockwave. So it's like there's like when I was on that airship part where it's like you're like jumping on, it's like sort of like this really awesome Sky Pirate section. It's like I had charge fully upgraded at that point, so it's like there's one part where it's like they like 2 dudes jumped onto my airboat and I was at the other end, and it's like I charged it up, hit them, and like the one dude's head exploded, the other dude from the shockwave just went flying off. And was like,
nice.
Fuck you.
Now I did not have that particular upgrade. I had the upgrade where you could have invulnerability.
Yeah.
But I definitely used shock jockey was the one I used the most. Loved that. Almost always had that equipped. I also used the fire one a lot. I really liked that one. I never once used the crow's nest one, I don't think, because it felt kind of clunky to me, but I didn't use it enough. I would like to try that again. Like, when I play the game again, I will not use the shotgun or the carbine at all if I can. And same with the
if I
figures.
play the game again, I will probably try to use possession a lot more.
Yeah.
Because that seems like that would be a really fun ability. If you got the upgrades for it, it'd be a lot more viable.
And I did use possession several times because there are parts where you just, let's say you're out of ammo and there's a machine gun turn around the next corner, you need it. Or else you're going to get fucked. So that helps sometimes. But yeah, that's basically it. But what I wanted to take this discussion is in how there is something just so crazy big and complex about the fights in this game that is awesome. And I think you've nailed it before when we've talked about it. Just that they have these massive arenas.
Yeah.
And it's so strategic.
Yeah, it's definitely, like most of the combat in the game isn't like the big arena format because, like the pacing is such that feel like you have like a lot of normal combat. You're just fighting a lot of normal enemies and stuff, and then you get to these big like watershed moments where it's just like, okay, I can just fuck shit up. Like I think the fight with Slade is like that. Then after you get out of that, you have like that whole big like outside port area, like before you can like use the shock jockey to get on the ferry. It's like that's like the first really big one where there tends to be like 2 or 3 sky rails moving around the perimeter, and there are a bunch of just different little tears that Elizabeth can open up to like get you an RPG or something like that, and they're just so much fun because they're just these big open areas where they'll just drop in a bunch of enemies, and you have to figure out, like you're like, for at least for me, how I played the game, I was constantly on the skylines, flying off, hitting dudes, like blowing some of the other guys away with the shotgun, taking some damage, hopping back on the skyline, going up, landing on an area, like spawning in a sniper rifle, using that and picking off a few guys. Like a handyman comes up and I like leave and stuff. And it's very, in those big areas, it's very frenetic and kinetic combat, but it is definitely a lot more strategic because you have so many different options available to you that it's like you can tackle those in any number of different ways and they're all very viable. But yeah.
I agree. I think there's, particularly in the latter half, there are ones where it is just so frantic and so fun, where I love the feeling where like you're fighting, like shoot here, shoot here, shoot here. Oh god, there's 5 more guys and I need to reload. Jump!
Yeah, you just jump onto the skyline and like zoom away on the zip line. Yeah. It's like by the time you come back, or then like I'll just come all the way back around to them. It's like, did you miss me, assholes? Because I'm back, my shield's recharged, and I've got my shotgun reloaded. You guys are fucked.
Yep. Pretty great.
Yeah.
This would be an interesting game to have a New Game Plus on.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed that they didn't have a New Game Plus mode.
Yeah.
Because you know, a lot of those abilities you don't, like the vigors you don't get until really late into the game. Like Return to Cinder is one I almost never used because
like, same here.
You got it so late that I was like, I've got my other ones like a bunch of other ones upgraded at this point. I was like, I'm not going to use a brand new one because it's like I'm not going to spend all that money.
The other thing I was thinking is there's those tonics you can get that increase your salt capacity, your health, your shield, and you don't ever get enough to get any of those fairly high if you're balancing them out. And so it's like
it's definitely, for me, I focused a lot on like
I did shields.
Shields and vigors were the 2 ones I used. I was never upgraded health.
Yeah, I upgraded health once or twice. Did shields a lot because I felt that was the most valuable one. But anyway, anything else to say sort of about the general gameplay? I think it controls...
It's like there's also the gear stuff that you get. I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, yeah. I did not use that a whole ton, but they were interesting.
There's something really interesting about it that I did not realize until I heard other people talking about it, that apparently that gear is randomized. Like you can,
really?
Yeah. So on multiple playthroughs, you get different gear. Because for me,
the first gear I got was the one where it basically chains all your attacks if you kill one person.
I never got that.
It's really cool. So what happens is, this is why I use shock jockey so much, and it came in handy so often. Where what would happen is I would shock one person, shoot them with my shotgun, they would die, and then that attack would basically shockwave out and affect everyone in the vicinity. Cool. And then you could get it changed. So if I had the shotgun, I'd kill one guy, everyone's stunned. Kill one guy, other people are stunned, and you keep doing it. And you basically, if you're running low on ammo, and you're like running low on health, that's a great way to save yourself because you can stun everybody and then kill them really efficiently.
That's cool. Like I never even that gear just never spawned in my game.
First one spawned for me. That's the first one that spawned, and I used it the whole game.
Yeah, for me, like I had when I finalized my gear loadout that I used for most of the game. It was really like I made my dude really self-sufficient because I had one that would give me back some health. Like I had a 50% chance of giving me back some health on a kill if I had like lower than 30% health or something like that. I had another one that had like a 40% chance to regenerate some salts if I got a kill. I had another one that if I killed a dude, it would then increase my weapon damage for 5 seconds, and I could chain that up to 5 kills. It's like at each time it would keep on increasing my weapon damage. And my other one, I think, increased reload speed or something really normal like that. So it's like by the time I got to the end of the game, I was like just killing machine where I would stun a bunch of people with the shock jockey, switch to charge in there, kill the dude I hit, get my weapon stuff back up, regenerate some of the salts and health I've lost, and just massacre the rest of the guys really quickly because my damage keeps on increasing and increasing. So by the time I got to the end, it was I was just whirlwind of blood and chaos just moving through. Every time I would start an encounter, everything would die in 5 seconds because
nice.
My opening gambit was so fucking powerful. But then I had less staying power, I guess. But it's I could if I stayed alive long enough, I could work my way back up by popping a few people and getting my health and salts back. It's a lot of fun.
Nice. All right. Do you think we're through with Bioshock Infinite for now?
I think so, yeah. We've definitely talked a lot. There's still so much to talk about with the game, but there's only so much we can say on one podcast, I guess.
Yeah, that's very true, yes.
Yeah.
So...
It's definitely, obviously, great fucking game.
Great.
I'm really curious to see, like, when The Last of Us comes out, how good that is, because it's got some really major competition for what's going to be my favorite game of the year, because it's going to be have to be really impressive to knock off Bioshock Infinite.
Yeah, because Bioshock Infinite is seriously one of my favorite games of all time. Yeah. And we neglected to do this. I want to give a shout out here. Troy Baker and Courtney Draper, the voice acting in this game is Pantheon level.
Yeah, really, really phenomenal. And it's one of the other things, like with them not finishing with the boss fight, I really like that Bioshock Infinite did, is that it did not have a silent protagonist. Like, feels like this is the top of, the last couple of months we've been building up this. We don't need to have silent protagonists in first-person shooters anymore. God damn it, we can do something different with it. Like Halo 4 had Master Chief talking while you were playing as him. Far Cry 3 had Jason Brody talking while you were playing as him. And now Bioshock Infinite had Booker be a fully developed, fully realized the central character to the story, and have him still be the protagonist as the first-person shooter. And it's like...
It works.
Yes, and they prove that you can pull it off. So I'm like, that should be the standard. Like, it should be something different about your game if you're going for a silent protagonist thing now. Like, let's do voice protagonists, first-person shooters. This proves it can work, and it can work phenomenally. And, again, with The Last of Us, Troy Baker is voicing the main character in that, so super looking forward to that because Troy Baker's fucking great.
He's great, and we've talked a lot about Persona 4 on this podcast. It is a testament to his work in this game that I did not think of Kanji Tatsumi all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Most of the time, yes, because he was so good in Persona 4.
Yeah, and Kanji is such a great character that's it's fun to think about Kanji in this world because those games they're so different.
No. Persona 4 is a very optimistic game. This is not. So, yeah. Anyway, and Courtney Draper, she has not done a lot of video game work before. I hope she does a lot.
Yeah, she's fucking phenomenal. Like I said this on last week's podcast when I mentioned the game, but again, there's a bunch of videos online. One of them is the one that's in the credits of Ken Levine, Troy Baker, and Courtney Draper talking about the voice acting stuff, some videos of them performing the voice acting, and it's really interesting to see because it's, again, not something you see a lot of in the video game business, or just in for American stuff, have that transparency on the voice acting. So
yeah. All right. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk.
I need a fucking break for a second.
Yes, we're going to come back, talk about Doctor Who, The Rings of Akhaten. If you have not seen it, you can listen to this segment later. If you're sick of our podcast because we've been talking for 3 hours, you can come back to it later. Whatever.
You can do whatever the fuck you want. It's your life. We can't dictate it for you.
Yeah. Alright, you've all heard that song before. We don't need to play it. But we are going to talk about Doctor Who, The Rings of Akhaten.
Doctor Who?
They did not say that this episode, and I want to get that out of the way now, because we're not going to make any jokes. This is a happy spot. Because there were no Doctor Who puns.
It is the bright light. It's just, thank God, Stephen Moffat didn't write this episode, and he didn't, pin the writer down and, beat him until he wrote some Doctor Who puns into his episode. It's it was just Doctor Who pun-free.
Yes. And it was a really good episode. I think we can agree.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It is...
Not perfect, but really good.
It's definitely not perfect, and I don't know if I would necessarily say it's the best episode of the season so far, but I enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it more than any other episode of the season.
I think it had the best 20-minute stretch of any episode
of
the season.
I would agree with that, yeah, definitely.
Here's the thing. We've talked a lot about episodes this year that have great components, but maybe end poorly. For instance, I think... Snowman was one that has a phenomenal first half and kind of goes off the rails. And there's some other ones like that. Angels Take Manhattan has a good setup, I think.
Yeah.
But its ending is infuriating.
The Power of Three.
Yes.
It was definitely that seemed pretty okay at first, and it ended with the worst title drop of anything ever of all time.
Yes.
Dinosaurs on a spaceship ends with the Doctor shooting a cripple into space and then blowing him up.
Yeah. So a lot of these episodes this year have just had sort of an inconsistency somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
And Rings of Akhaten was not like that at all. It was there are definitely the episode is not great for its first 2/3.
Yeah,
and there are some stretches that we'll talk about that were a little slower, but none of it was bad.
Yeah. I didn't. There's no point in the episode where I was like, I dislike this part. I was like, this part's a little bit messy, but it's still kind of fun.
And it builds to, I think, one of the best climaxes revived Doctor Who has ever had.
I definitely agree. Like, it's so good that I almost wish that, like, that scene, the end scene, felt like this is how this Doctor should regenerate. Like, this should be his last moment. Like, obviously, like, not the rest of the episode wouldn't work with that, because it's like, I'd want that episode to be more about the Doctor. But it's like, but that last, like, sort of speech and everything about, like, take my memories, it's like, that should be how Matt Smith's Doctor regenerates. It's like, it's almost kind of sucks that it's like, it's here. It's just like, what are they going to do? Like, how are they going to top that when he actually has to regenerate?
Right, and I just think that scene so sums up who he is, but here's where to me the episode kicks into high gear, is that it's not just that the 11th Doctor has this character-defining moment.
Yeah.
It's that it's contextualized in a way where we get to really know Clara in a really great way, I think, through this episode, this version of Clara, where I think that the introduction of that her mother dying is a thing for her, I think works really well, and hit me really hard, because not only does the Doctor get this defining moment, but that shows Clara who he is, and she gets this sense, and then she gets to turn it back in favor and have a speech about her. And by the end of this episode, I just felt their connection was so much deeper. He was no longer just viewing her as a puzzle. I think he got to know her as a person, and same for her. He's not a puzzle anymore. And I just... God, if that ending is so perfect, and I wound up rewinding it and transcribing the two speeches they make, because you look at this writing, the writer of this episode was Neil Cross, who is best known for writing the show Luther on the BBC with Idris Elba. And he has not written for Doctor Who before, but he wrote 2 episodes this season, and actually this is the second of his. The first he wrote is airing later. It's a weird thing. It's 2 episodes from now. It's one about ghosts. So I look forward to that, because he's a damn good writer. And there's great dialogue throughout this episode. Early on, Clara goes to comfort the little girl. And that's a great just little exchange. And I love, one of the things I like about this episode is it often takes the time to just calm down and let the characters talk. And the language they exchange is really, really well done.
Yeah.
And especially those speeches at the end, you just look at the combinations of words. It's beautiful, and it's kind of minimalist in a way. It's not like really sort of flashy language, I don't think. But it's language that is so beautifully constructed that when you put it in the hands of someone like Matt Smith, he can do wonders with it.
Yeah.
And Jenna Louise Coleman can just redefine her character with it. It's fantastic writing, and I hope as we go through the episode we can come back and look at some of these quotes again.
Yeah.
But it's great. So what do you want to say about all that?
I guess for me, like, I think the ending was fucking phenomenal, and with those speeches, like, you know, Doctor Who always needs some, like, really great speeches. Like, that, like, because since the Doctor is not a violent character, that sort of tends to be your climax as he gives some really dramatic speech. This is one of the finer ones in recent memory, I think. It's just like, you always have to have some of those, like, just, like, really dramatic, the Doctor just fucking yelling at a goddamn, like, crazy gas giant monster.
And I think we have to talk about the production values of that ending, too, because that shot of him standing silhouetted black against the big planet, that's one of the most beautiful shots they've ever done.
It's fucking... And then there's also, while he's giving the speech, there's a shot in profile where there's like a tear streaking down his face, and it's like the tear is highlighted because there's like this blue light coming off. It's like, that's a fucking phenomenal shot.
Yeah, just great cinematography.
Yeah.
And the music, Murray Gold's music there, because he's arranged this big choir piece for all the people to sing. I mean, this is another thing we're talking about the ending. It's not just these character moments. So much comes together. There's so much payoff here.
Yeah.
Where this idea of this culture that does its sort of magic through songs. Yeah. And it controls these beings through songs. And the little girl character, I keep forgetting her name, but she's the Queen of Years.
Yeah.
And she's able to kind of step into her own and fulfill her arc by singing and getting everyone else singing. And over that song are these 2 speeches that happen. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. It's great.
Yeah.
But let's go back and maybe we'll get back to the episode. But for the first 2/3, it's obviously not at quite that level because it builds to that. But we start with, I think, a really nice sequence where the Doctor's kind of seeing Clara's birth.
It's a really weird sequence when, like, you first start watching it because without any of the context, because it's just this, like, British dude who just, like, almost gets hit by a car because the leaf hits him in the face, and then it's like this British girl saves him, and then they start flirting, and you're like, did I turn on Doctor Who, or is this some sort of like romantic comedy or something?
Yeah.
What the fuck is going on? And then you see Matt Smith stalking these two people throughout all of history. And then you quickly realize, oh, he's like trying to piece together what the fuck is Clara. This is like by following like her birth and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And we get that, and then we get, I think, one of my favorite just little beats is Clara is sitting on the steps waiting for the doctor, and we just have a focus on her face as outside we hear the familiar TARDIS sound. She just gets this little smile and kind of looks up and hears the knock. And it just kind of perfectly captures that sense of excitement whenever we have a new companion. Really nice scene with them on the TARDIS together. And then when we get to Akhaten, I think this is one of those Doctor Who stories that I think was legitimately interesting. There are parts of it that bogged down, but I liked this culture. It felt something like different we had not necessarily seen 100 times.
It was nice to have a story in space, you know, like there were a lot of aliens. It was of like a very like Mos Eisley Cantina sort of. And let's look at all these different dudes. Look at all the prosthetics we made.
And actually, you know, I think a lot of people have been comparing this episode to Star Wars or Indiana Jones. And I've seen online.
I don't know. I've seen people comparing it to Indiana Jones, but I don't see the Indiana Jones ones. I see the Star Wars one just because, like, just for that Mos Eisley Cantina, like, there are all these different aliens, like very like Star Warsy aliens.
And the aliens felt Star Warsy, but the general atmosphere actually felt a lot like an old Star Trek episode to me.
Definitely. The actual tone and atmosphere of the episode felt like a Star Trek one.
I mean, for one, they're fighting a god. Yeah. That's a Star Trek thing. And every Star Trek episode at one point. No, just kidding. But lots of them do. They kind of meet a godlike figure. These
part where the Doctor, like Clara, doesn't understand the concept of love, and the Doctor teaches it to her.
Yeah,
but that doesn't happen.
No, but
should have though. It was really the other way around. But
okay. Anyway, but yeah, the sets looked very Star Trek-y.
Yeah.
In fact, I actually wrote my notes, and I don't fully mean this, but there were parts that looked a little cheap in this episode, and I actually mean that kind of lovingly because I liked how handcrafted the sets looked in this one, and then. Just sort of, how it built. Now, obviously, once you get to the big speeches and stuff, that's Doctor Who 100%.
Yeah.
But there's some nice Star Trek-y vibes to how the story develops, and that this culture feels like there's a lot more to it than what we're seeing, but we're seeing enough to suggest a larger culture.
Yeah.
And I liked, for instance, that a lot of Doctor Who episodes recently, especially this season, have been running, fighting, running, kind of all the time. This one there was running at a certain point, but for a while it was just... You know, Clara is off on her own. We don't see the Doctor for a while.
Yeah.
She talks to the little girl. There's no real threat or anything. It's just the little girl then goes off and is giving her song performance, and we just get a nice, like, kind of 5-minute sequence of seeing how this culture represents itself through music, and then shit gets out of hand.
Yeah.
But it builds really well.
Yeah, it felt like a Doctor Who episode to me. Like, this is what, like, this is, like, why I like this episode so goddamn much, is that it was just, like, this is an episode of Doctor Who, and it's just an episode of Doctor Who. It doesn't have this, like, you know, like this overhanging story, like overbearing on like the actual like what's going on in just this episode. It doesn't have these companions that are just sort of hanging on that don't really need to be there. It's not bothering with having to try to set up a new companion. It's just like the Doctor has his companion Clara, and they go to an alien culture, and they just get to explore around for a little bit, and then they find something fucked up, and they try to fix it. Like, that is a Doctor Who fucking episode.
And it even had some nice commentary on the particulars of what a Doctor Who episode is, with him saying, we don't walk away. Yeah. These things that feel like... I think Stephen Moffat tries to insert some of that too much in some of his episodes now, of the Doctor giving these big pieces of his own philosophy.
Yeah.
But here it felt much more natural, because he has his new companion, and he's trying to tell her, I'm not a guy who runs out on people.
Yeah.
When we find these things, we're going to do something about it. And throughout, I liked that repeating motif of the idea of, being you go to a place and you be a good person. Kind of the essence of Doctor Who. And I think it touches on that a lot.
Yeah. And it's like, and right after I finished watching this episode, I was just like, I want to watch more Doctor Who, so I went and I watched some old Fourth Doctor stories. I watched the Ribos Operation and The Power of Krull, which are two, like, really fantastic Robert Holmes episodes. And it was just like, it's so nice to just be, like, really excited about just watching fucking Doctor Who. And it's like, I can just enjoy it. It's like, it's fucking Doctor Who.
Yep.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Rings of Akhaten.
Yep. And then the middle section, where sort of he's holding up the door and they're fighting to the grandfather alien. That part is not bad by any stretch of the imagination.
It just sort of feels a little bit messy, because it's like the grandfather alien, because that's not the monster, like the ultimate monster is the gas giant. And like, so that thing just feels like it's kind of underbaked, because you don't quite know like what the fuck is, like, why is that there? It says like it's an alarm clock. It's like, what? Why are they trying to wake up the thing? Like why can't it just be they're making sacrifices to the gas giant? It's like, well, because you need some padding. And then also they have like, I forget what I think they call them, the Vigil or something. Like those 3 dudes in like the masks. It's like they're in like 2 scenes. And then they're just gone.
They look kind of cool.
Yeah, they look really cool. I was like kind of looking forward. It's like, what the fuck are these guys? Like, what are they going to do? It's like, nothing. They're going to do, like, literally nothing. Like, they show up for a little bit in, like, that scene with the grandfather. And then the grandfather wakes up and they're like, and then the doctor's like, well, their job's done. And that's why they left. So because they just leave. It's like, well, why the fuck were they in the episode? Like, it felt like they were, like, hangers on from, like, this other draft. It was just like, we still need, like, a couple of more, like, minutes of screen time before we can get to the real climax. So it's like, put a little bit more of them in there.
But that being said, these scenes still build the Doctor and Clara's respective arcs well.
And they're still just, like, they're fun. Like, there's, like, a lot of shit going down. It's like, it's just kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, and actually, I want to touch on, there's a lot of sonic screwdriver here.
Yeah.
And you could say it's not quite the abuse of the sonic screwdriver we see in a lot of other circumstances, because as you noted, we were talking before we recorded this podcast, that this whole culture is based in sound, so it's a good time to bring out the sonic.
Yeah, so, like, it makes sense that, like, because he does 2 major things with the sonic screwdriver, is he, like, opens that door and holds the door up, where it's like, which the only part of that really makes no sense is how he's, like, really struggling to keep the door up. That makes no sense. But, like, totally makes sense that you could use a sonic device to open this door from this culture that uses music to open everything. Because you noted, like, you know, later the girl used, like, sings a song to open a different door. So it's like, that makes sense. And they're like, you know, they don't, like, directly explain it, but it's not a large step to imagine that the Vigil, because the other thing he does is that he blocks this attack from the Vigil. It's like, it's not a big stretch to think that, like, that they're doing some sort of, like, sonic attack. It's just, like, special effects, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, like, I can live with it. It's not, like I said before we recorded the podcast, it's not like the Ninth Doctor repairing a fence with the sonic screwdriver. That just makes no fucking sense whatsoever. It's like, this one, at least there's, like, the loosest of justifications for it, and it's like, that's enough for me to buy into it. It's Doctor Who.
Because the sonic screwdriver is nothing more than a loose justification.
Yeah, exactly.
Although, here's a moment I thought was kind of funny, and like, looking at it back now, I know why this happens the way it does, but it's when the Doctor, they have to, like, buy the motorcycle. And the guy's like, I could take your sonic. He's like, I need this. And he makes Clara give up her mother's ring. It makes the Doctor look like a dick for a second.
It's really weird because it's also, like, what I thought was going to happen is I thought the Doctor, because they had that conversation before she doesn't actually buy the motorcycle, and then she goes off and finds the Queen or whatever. And then that's when the Doctor leaves. I thought the Doctor is going to go back to the TARDIS and just grab something. The dude's been alive for thousands of years. He's got something worth, like, that has enough, like, emotional, like, memento stuff around it, or whatever, that they'll use for their currency. It's like, he's got to have something. Like, give her your fucking bow tie.
Yeah.
Like, you've got tons of the fucking things.
Right. You can go back in time and get another one.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought that was kind of a funny note, although it does set up a nice moment at the end where they give her the ring back.
Yeah. And, it's obvious why they did it, but it's a little contrived.
I mean, this is a very well-constructed episode where everything...
Yeah, it sets up stuff and then pays it off.
Yes.
Like, it definitely, like, uses that really well.
In fact,
with
this is... Yeah, and this is something I wrote in my episode, in my notes, is that I just felt like it was simplistic. It was just... It knew what it wanted to do, and it really didn't take off more than it could chew, with the exception maybe of those 3 guys who didn't serve much of a purpose. Other than that, it kept small scale. It was not one of those, like, Stephen Moffat episodes where he tries to do...
It's like, it's really refreshing coming off of a bunch of Stephen Moffat episodes where Stephen Moffat tries to do so much and just, like, can't do it all.
Yeah.
It's like, he'll bring up a bunch of really interesting concepts and just, like, they'll just be in the background.
Yeah, and Bells of St. John was one of the calmer episodes he's done, but even then, they did not feel as cohesive as this one did to me.
Yeah.
Let's see, other things I wanted to note. Surprising number of references throughout to the Doctor's 2 hearts. I thought that was kind of funny. Not a bad thing or anything, it's just like, it's sort of like every Doctor Who writer has different things about the show they like.
Yeah.
Like, Chris Chibnall loves his, Silurians for whatever reason, so he can do that, and no one else would probably do that, but sure, why not, Chris Chibnall? And then now, the Neil Cross just likes to reference that the Doctor has 2 hearts.
Yeah.
Which is fine, because, if you had 2 hearts, you would probably be cognizant of it.
I suppose. Are you particularly cognizant of the fact, like, throughout your day, that you only have one heart?
But I'm surrounded by people who have one heart. So if I had two hearts and I was surrounded by people who had one heart...
How do you know that that girl did not have, like, 5 hearts? You don't fucking know. Like, you don't know the relative number of hearts of the biology of the alien species on that, like, asteroid.
Good point.
Yeah.
In any case.
Idiot.
It was fine. Other thing I wanted to note, before we get on to the ending again, is the Doctor says he visited Akhaten with his granddaughter.
Yeah, I like that. I like that little line, and this might be a little harebrained, but hopefully that might mean they're, like, bringing that up again for...
Clara is Susan.
No, God, no. I was going to say, to have that be something that, like, they're dealing with the 50th anniversary. I think I've said this before, but were I to write a 50th anniversary episode for Doctor Who, it sure as shit would be mostly about Susan, because she's the first companion. She is what the first episode of Doctor Who is fucking about, so...
Yeah,
she's the unearthly child.
I hope they do. And I think there's been another Stephen Moffat episode where he references the granddaughter. So I don't remember which one it is, but I know this is not the first time in, like, the revived series.
Yeah, definitely. It's come up before.
So they're cognizant of it, which is a nice sign. So, and throughout, I think there's also just something to this adventure where having the new companion, Clara, and again, getting to see it through her eyes, as with any of these stories, it pops more. It's more fun. This would not be a good episode to me if it had Amy and Rory in their, like, 78th appearance.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Where it definitely... Just Clara being able to just be a new companion and be a companion and just a normal companion definitely makes this episode feel a lot more fresh.
And also having this story tailored to let her kind of... to lets us see what she can do, who she is. And I think highlighting some ways in this version of Clara is an interesting one, and I like her. And I like this. So we get to the end... I think it's just paced beautifully. Everything pays off. It all comes together. Really great.
Yeah.
So, and I just
when I was watching the episode, I watched the last, like, 5 minutes, like 8 minutes or so, like 3 times. I just like rewind this. Like, I have to watch the speeches again because they're holy fucking shit, they're really good.
Yeah, and the acting is just fantastic throughout.
And it's one of those moments in Doctor Who where it's just like when Matt Smith is delivering that speech that it's like it feels like, I can see the other doctors delivering the speech in a very different way.
And you can also see how through 11 lifetimes he's culminated to making this speech.
Yeah.
It's just that's something Doctor Who can do that no other TV show can claim.
Yeah.
And it works really well.
He's got a nice, like, Omega reference where he says he walked in a universe where the laws of physics were devised by...
Do you want to just read the speech?
Not really.
Not really? Okay. I had them there
because he read it so fucking well.
He did, I know. But there are some great lines here. Like you said, the laws of physics were devised by the mind of a madman.
Yeah, that's the reference to the Omega, like the 3 Doctors special.
Yep. And I just love how it builds to the end where he's just saying, he's talking about I've lost things you will never understand. I know things, secrets that must never be told, knowledge that must never be spoken. And just kind of getting to this point where it fully represents to me the sort of melancholy and vulnerability and everything the Doctor carries with him at this point in his life, which is a major theme of the Matt Smith Doctor.
Yeah, definitely. It's like there's also like there's another element to the speech too because like he then goes on to this like take it all. Where this is sort of the part where it's like feels like this almost should be the way this Doctor regenerates. There's a sense of the Doctor kind of wants it gone, like he's part of him is just like I want to let all this shit go because there's so much. I've got like so much history and so much memory. And that like, would be I want it to go away now.
And I agree that would be a great way for the 11th Doctor to go because we've talked about this all the time. One of the defining aspects of Smith's performance is that he can project age.
Yeah.
And you really do get in that sense. You get as strong as any other moment on Doctor Who that this guy is 1,000 years old.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also I like later after because then Clara does the whole thing with the leaf and that's it's like I can write it off because like the speeches are so well delivered that it's like is another Doctor Who conclusion where that doesn't make any sense. Like how he's defeated by the infinite possibilities that leaf could have held because of her mom died before her time. Like that's dumb.
I love that speech though.
I really like the speech, but like its practical ramifications in terms of the plot make no fucking sense.
Well, no, but that's that happens.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm willing to let it go. It's good for the sake of the episode, but it's like
it's not as bad as Clara's tears.
It's not the but in the same realm as the tears. Is what I'm saying of like that being this like bullshit. Like you won the day with the power of love. Like it's not the power of love, but it's the power of Not love. Love that could have been, but wasn't lived. The Bioshock Infinite possibilities is basically what it was.
Yeah, it did not bother me at all. I thought that was, to me, just as powerful as the Doctor stuff, and I don't know, that hits me personally. I lost my dad last year. I think that's just, I don't know. I think there's something about this episode that is constructed from a point where the loss that Clara is feeling, it's never quite at the forefront except here, but I just think they tackle it really well in an episode where
I definitely agree, but like what I'm saying with like the practical ramifications is that that's in it, like are you saying that like if he had consumed that child that would not have then destroyed him because that child was like 10 years old. She had far more infinite possibilities.
Of course, I wasn't.
That's what I'm saying. It was like
I wasn't arguing with you on that.
I like it, but it's bullshit.
Yeah, but there are lots of things that are bullshit. So it didn't really strike me, but it's okay. It's all good. So, lots of great writing in this episode.
But what I was going to say with that is that there's also this really great line after that where it's like she's saying it's like where the Doctor's explaining, the infinity thing. It's like infinity is too much even for your appetite.
Yeah.
And there's something about like the way he said that line that also like it's almost like back on the Doctor of like the Doctor trying to give it up. That's like the infinity is too much for the Doctor too. That's like there's this very sort of like. While it was really uplifting, there's also very cynical and like fatalistic element of like this like dark side under it of like the Doctor saying take it all, then infinity is too much of look at yourself, Doctor, like you're the grandfather in the situation to take it a little bit more literally, but it's like I liked it.
Yeah. So and then I thought there was a nice scene at the end where we kind of are reminded that Clara does not know why the Doctor is so fascinated by her.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a graceful way of doing that. But I'm interested in where that story is going. It actually does feel to me like how back in Series 5 they were able to balance the cracked storyline.
Yeah.
Where it did not consume the episodes that it was not about, but they were able to work it in there really organically.
Yeah, because it's just, it's nice because it's all just character stuff. It's not like this very overbearing plot stuff.
Yeah. So in the end, I actually would say I think this is the best episode of the season so far. I think there have been other ones that are very good, but
that's probably true. I mean, it's hard because I do feel like a lot of elements of the episode are pretty messy, particularly in like the first half, even like the first 2/3. But like the ending is so fucking good.
But to me, that's kind of what we talked about. There are other good episodes this season that have good elements.
Yeah.
But many of them don't tie together in any meaningful way, and that's the thing that matters. That's where what you end on is what matters, and preferably, yes, everything works 100%. But I don't know if that's where we are with Doctor Who right now this season.
Yeah.
Where there has not been an episode that's worked 100%. I think
Asylum of the Daleks is the most tightest like episode where it's like it works within the context of itself.
Rory Amy divorce.
Yeah, but it resolves that within the context of itself. Like
I guess so.
It's a little bit like the biggest problem with that episode is that they don't follow up on that. Like that's like I'm fine with it being within that episode. Okay. I mean, it's kind of it's the problems with that episode. Like aren't because of the episode, it's because of all the other shit. Like they'd already resolved Amy and Rory's shit, so bringing it up now is like kind of redundant. And it's like they don't carry on with it. If they had, it might have been fine. Yeah.
No, Asylum with the Daleks was good. This to me it had a moment that was legitimately great, and I think is one that will go down kind of in the annals of Doctor Who history. And
it might because the weird thing about this episode. I don't know how much of you've seen, but most people really don't like this episode. When I've been online, I've looked at people talking about it. I have no idea why. I have no idea how, most people don't like this episode.
Because they were
have been sticking with this season up to this point and being, okay with it.
Because people like their Doctor Who puns and they like their
timey
wimey and whatever. I don't get Doctor Who fans, and I don't particularly care what they think. I just...
Yeah,
whatever.
I don't either. I just thought I would throw it out there because I was so shocked after I watched the episode. I was like... Man, this was I had so much fun with this episode. I really liked it. And I was like, I wonder what other people thought of it, because you weren't up here, because I couldn't talk to you about it. So I, opened up my laptop and went online. I'm like, everybody must have loved this, right? Because all those other episodes were terrible. There's such a nice breath of fresh air. And everyone was like, this episode was so messy. I didn't like it. It's like, the fuck are you people talking about? What show have you been watching for the last year? God damn it.
And I think I'm very optimistic about where Doctor Who is right now, because I know I liked it more than you did, but I loved Bells of St. John. I would put that number 2 to this. And these were 2 weeks where I thought we had 2 very good, solid Doctor Who episodes there where I liked consistently throughout and had no major problems with either. And I'm happy right now.
Like I said, after I watched this episode, I went and just watched old Doctor Who episodes because, it felt like that to me. It just felt like a Doctor Who episode, and it's like, hopefully, like the rest of the season can hold that up.
Yeah,
like,
and that's
definitely, this show that's like, we've got the shit done. Like, we're done with the Rory stuff. We're done with the Rory and Amy stuff. We're done with setting up Clara. It's like, we can just have Doctor Who episodes now, which is what this whole fucking season was just supposed to be in the first place. And we got to it in like the 7th, or this was the 8th episode, in the 8th fucking episode. Why did it take so long for this to happen? What the fuck happened to this season? It was supposed to be from the start. They're like, just a bunch of standalone episodes. We just want to do some Doctor Who, not do this overbearing plot stuff. How did they fuck that up so bad that they didn't get to it till the fucking season's more than halfway over?
But, the next couple look really good. Next week we have Cold War, written by Mark Gatiss. He's a good Doctor Who writer. It's
in a fucking submarine, so I'm on board.
And it's got Davos from Game of Thrones. That's a good actor. Looks like it could be fun.
That's what it was. There was a bunch of people that I was like, is everyone misspelling Davros? And Davros is not in the next episode. I was like, who the fuck is this Davos guy? Who are you talking about?
Wouldn't that be great if they did Daleks on a submarine and had Davros there?
So dumb.
He's working for the Russians. No, but that's going to be next week. The week after that is the next Neil Cross episode. Wrote this one, and it's about ghosts. I feel like he could do that well.
Yeah.
We've got the one where the episode titled Journey to the Center of the TARDIS coming up. That sounds fun. We've got fucking Neil Gaiman writing a Cyberman episode.
So, yeah.
And then a finale written by Stephen Moffat with River Song in it. We'll see.
What? Is that confirmed that she's in? Well, can we just leave her alone? Like, it feels like she's just... That stuff's done, I feel like.
It feels like she's contractually obligated to be in every Stephen Moffat episode. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, like at this point, like we've... Like, River's story was effectively ended in the last season. Like, there's like, we've seen her die already, so it's like there's this weird... The character's been done for a really long time in a weird way, but in a way she's not done because we've already seen her die, and we haven't like directly set that up yet, but it's like, do we need to? It's weird. I just kind of wish we'd just leave Riversong alone.
I do too, but I feel like she's part of a bigger end game for him with the 11th Doctor.
I guess that's probably true. He's probably like thought out of how he wants the 11th Doctor to regenerate, and she's probably involved in some way.
Yeah, so we'll see. But we've got John Lewis Coleman, we've got Matt Smith, and we've got some fun premises these next couple weeks. So
we've got some Doctor Who ahead of us that we can look forward to.
Yep. So
hopefully they will be just completely devoid of Doctor Who puns. This episode didn't have any. We can only hope that Stephen Moffat.
I mean, that alone makes it the best.
That slipped through the Stephen Moffat cracks.
I mean, Sean, that alone makes it the best episode of the season, right?
Basically, yeah.
Asylum of the Daleks ended on a Doctor Who pun.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so
you hated that. You hated that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hated every single time it came up.
Yeah.
Every So like, that alone does make this fucking, this is the best episode of the season.
All right.
This is just like, just that alone, honestly, would just make, like, even if everything else in this episode was really poor, that would make it alone just like, yes, thank you. Thank fucking God.
Yep. All right. We'll be back next week. We should be back on Monday. We've had a couple weeks where we had to go a little later, but, I think everything's ironed out now. So next Monday, we'll talk about episode 3 of Doctor Who, or episode 9, or however the fuck you want to count it, Cold War by Mark Gatiss.
Episode like 798 or whatever it is.
Yeah. And we will talk about something else as well.
Probably.
Have not decided what that will be.
So I guess we'll find out.
Yes.
Or we won't. And we'll just have a Doctor Who episode because, fuck it, we have to talk about something.